Spirit power. Level point 5. Kong Ming'an blinked. His vision, which had been blurred a moment before, sharpened, but everything felt off, familiar yet strangely new. He lowered his head, flexed his fingers, and closed his hand. The tangible sensation steadied him, and his pupils trembled. Am I reborn? No, not exactly reborn. More like the memories of a previous life waking up. He fumbled through them, trying to make sense of the sudden flood of information. Pieces assembled in his sea of consciousness: Sun-Moon Empire, Mingdu, Hall of Worship, Kong Deming, the sole heir of the Kong family. He was Kong Ming'an, Hallmaster of the Sun-Moon Empire's Hall of Worship, the biological grandson of Kong Deming. And he'd just awakened a level 0.5 innate spirit power in his grandfather's lab. The memory awakening had not been gentle. It left his skull splitting with pain. A broad, firm hand settled on his shoulder. Ming'an. The voice carried an authority that calmed the last of his days. His chaotic thoughts drew back to the present. He raised his head and saw the old man before him. White hair and beard, a resolute face, stern features softened now by worry. Kong Deming. The remaining memory fragments clicked into place: identity, bloodline, relationship. The confusion ebbed, and a strange calm took hold. Feeling his pitifully weak spirit power crawling through him, Kong Ming'an steadied himself. He didn't answer Kong Deming's concerned look or glance at the pity and regret on the faces of the 9-level soul engineers gathered around. He met his grandfather's eyes and said, clear and steady, "Grandpa, I want to try my spirit again." Surprise flickered across Kong Deming's face. He hadn't expected Ming'an to compose himself so quickly. He pressed lightly on his grandson's shoulder in encouragement, then withdrew. The black-robed spirit master in charge of the awakening stepped forward. Kong Ming'an placed his hand on the awakening crystal as spirit power began to flow into it. There was no blaze of light, no heavy pressure, only a breath of fluctuation, almost imperceptible. But the air above his outstretched right palm distorted in a way no one had seen before, as if an invisible pebble had been dropped into space and sent out faint ripples. The air grew viscous and warm. Light that passed through it bent in subtle ways, making the edges of his hand look blurred and warped. This... The black-robed spirit master's voice went dry. He had overseen countless awakenings across the Empire, had seen beast spirits, tool spirits, plant-type spirits, everything. Yet this was unlike anything he had encountered. He leaned forward, curiosity plain on his face, searching for any familiar trace. Nothing. No form, no outline, no typical signature. He began to doubt what he thought he knew. Kong Deming's expression mirrored the confusion for a heartbeat before he steadied and asked with unusual gravity, "Ming'an, what is your spirit?" Kong Ming'an closed his fingers slowly. The faint spatial ripples stilled as if they had never been. "Energy itself, Grandpa. Energy itself," Kong Deming repeated, and then, suddenly, his eyes flashed with light. The tremor of excitement was unmistakable, like a scholar who'd stumbled onto an unexplored continent. Energy, in the world of spirit masters, was more fundamental than spirit power itself. It bordered on the concept of origin, yet had never shown itself as a spirit. Invisible and intangible. Energy. Kong Deming murmured, staring at his grandson as if seeing him anew. Kong Ming'an barely listened. He scanned the laboratory and fixed on the row of spirit tool crafting stations, their metal surfaces cold and keen. With only a level 0.5 innate spirit power, he had a glaring weakness in the Duo world. If he wanted resources and rapid growth, he needed to prove his worth, and fast. Without hesitation, he walked to the nearest station. Kong Deming watched quietly, eyes full of a careful, expectant scrutiny. Ming'an picked up a basic first-level spirit tool core baseplate. Pale green metal, half the size of a palm, smooth as a mirror, and then the finest spirit tool carving knife. The memories of crafting, learned early in this life, surfaced. He began to pour his weak spirit power into the knife. It flowed so slowly, each push felt like wading through mud. Just as that sluggish spirit power reached the tip of the knife and the blade touched the baseplate, something minuscule and fleet passed through Ming'an's composed eyes. In the next instant, the expected glow of spirit power on the metal did not appear. Instead, the hard metal seemed to soften and give way around the knife, as if the blade were slicing through some malleable fluid rather than steel. There was no scraping, no sparks, no shavings. Guided by Ming'an's steady wrist, the knife slid across the plate like water flowing over stone, smooth, uninterrupted. Though his spirit power was near useless by normal standards, in Ming'an's hands it took on an odd quality. It was less force and more a key that acted directly on the energy structure of the metal, taming and reshaping it with ease. The process of engraving spirit tool circuits, normally a grueling fusion of spirit power, mental focus, and craft, unfolded with eerie fluency. The grooves were so natural they looked formed rather than carved. A strange, faint light shimmered within them. It was as if his energy spirit resonated with the material energy of the tool itself. Time passed in silence, broken only by the soft whisper of the knife and Ming'an's shallow breathing. When the final arc closed, he set the blade down. His fingertips trembled, his spirit power was nearly spent. Sweat beaded on his brow, and his face drained of color, but his eyes shone with an intensity that belied his exhaustion. He poured the last of his spirit power into the core. A subtle resonance sounded, soft but unmistakable, and a steady, pale blue halo pulsed gently like a heartbeat, illuminating the delicate circuit patterns on the core. It had worked. A standard first-level spirit tool core had activated in the hands of someone who had just awakened and barely had 0.5 level innate spirit power. Silence fell heavy in the lab. The 9-level soul engineers, who had been ready with familiar consolations, were struck speechless. This shouldn't have been possible. 0.5 level spirit power could barely operate a tool, let alone carve and activate a whole core. Kong Deming moved before anyone could react, a faint gust stirred by the speed of his step. He paid no heed to the blue core. His gaze, like the finest of spirit-scanning instruments, was fixed on the engraved circuit. He traced the grooves with his eyes. The smooth work, the strange shimmer within them, the seamless unity between circuit and base plate. He whispered, almost reverently, "Energy." He hovered a trembling hand above the core. "So it can be interpreted this way?" After a long breath, he turned to Ming'an. Gone was the elder's worry. In its place burned the fervor of discovery. With solemnity, Kong Deming asked, "Ming'an, what do you need?" Ming'an didn't answer at once. He ignored the eager inquiries in his grandfather's gaze and the shocked silence around him. He watched the slowly pulsing blue core, utterly drained but serene. The light washed his pale face. Despite his exhaustion, a small, relaxed smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Well, it wasn't a completely disastrous start, was it? Chapter 2. The Method of Bodybuilding and the Beginning of Body Cultivation. Sun Moon Empire, Mingdu, Kong family residence. As head of the Hall of Worship, a pillar of the empire and the most powerful person beneath the emperor, Kong Deming's mansion was surprisingly plain compared to the lavish homes of other imperial dignitaries. Anyone familiar with the household would only say, "Elder Kong is indifferent to wealth and fame. He truly is a pillar of the empire." Inside, Kong Ming'an sat cross-legged on his bed, meditating. It had been nearly 60 hours since he had awakened his spirit, energy, and verified his abilities. All records of his awakened spirit, his innate spirit power rank, and the fact that he had forged a rank 1 soul core with only 0.5 rank innate power had been sealed. The rank 9 soul engineers who witnessed it were all his grandfather's trusted confidants. Keeping the incident quiet had been simple enough. But none of that occupied him now. His mind was focused on the faint yet extraordinarily clear spirit power in his body and the formless, omnipresent spirit itself. Energy. What was energy? On Duluo continent, spirit power is the basis for driving spirits and unleashing spirit abilities. Mental force is an extension of will, the bridge for perception and control. Both are forms of energy: flow, transformation, release, and these fundamentals form the cornerstone of the Spirit Master system. Kong Ming'an's energy spirit had a special relationship with that cornerstone. It granted him exceptional control and insight into the flow of energy. After 2 days of probing, he had summarized 2 core abilities his spirit displayed. First, powerful internal control. He had near-perfect command over the energy he wielded, specifically his spirit power and mental force. That had been clear when he forged a rank 1 soul core in front of several rank 9 soul engineers 2.5 days ago. His 0.5 rank spirit power, though barely a flicker, obeyed his will without dispersion or delay, forming the soul core with flawless precision. Second, external energy vision. When he concentrated, He could see the flow of energy within about 5 meters around him. He could perceive his spirit power trickling through his meridians and his mental force like invisible ripples around his body. He could also detect spirit power fluctuations and mental force fields emitted by other living things, as if viewing halos of light or streams of air in the dark. His spirit was, in some ways, ridiculously powerful. But was it only control over spirit power and mental force? Kong Ming'an doubted it. The spirit was named energy. Surely there must be more. Either the spirit had some latent limitation because his innate was so low, or because the only forms of energy he currently possessed were spirit power and mental force, his spirit's scope was limited for now. He had to test it. The thought thrilled him. This was far more interesting than dealing with the lab chaos his mentor and classmates had caused in his previous life. When he opened his eyes, several jade bottles sat before him, gifts from his grandfather after learning of his discovery. There were 3 kinds of medicinal pills that could boost innate spirit power without side effects. 2 bottles contained pills developed by the Sun Moon Empire. The third was wreathed in mist and cool to the touch, the Xuan water pill. Memory surfaced as he held the bottle. The Xuan water pill was a top-tier medicine for strengthening the origin and laying a foundation, purifying bone marrow and transforming tendons, improving innate spirit power aptitude, especially for low-rank spirit masters. Its gentle water-attributed energy could nourish meridians, flush out impurities, and raise innate power by roughly 1 rank. Though it was a specialty of the Xuanming sect, the Empire had purchased a supply. The bottle in front of Ming'an contained 5 pills, enough for him to build a tolerance. This allocation reflected both his value and his status as the Kong family heir. He uncorked the bottle. A refreshing medicinal scent spread out. Without hesitation, he popped an azure, lychee-sized pill into his mouth. The pill melted instantly into a cool, vast torrent that surged through his limbs and acupoints. In his perception, it washed through his meridians, widening channels narrowed by innate deficiencies and sweeping away impurities like melting snow. Thread by thread, the medicinal energy integrated into his faint spirit power origin. Eventually, the torrent diminished into a gentle stream that nourished his refreshed meridians. Kong Ming'an opened his eyes. The previously whisper-thin stream had visibly thickened. Though still imperfectly smooth, the flow was steadier. Innate spirit power, roughly increased to about 1.5 rank, he murmured. In the original story, Huo Guai's Xuan water pill had boosted him from early rank 11 to the peak of rank 12, helped by his will, a mysterious heaven skill, and an unawakened ice spirit. Ming'an's absorption was more ordinary, neither miraculous nor poor. It was fine. Starting low could be compensated with resources. Innate aptitude could be improved, and he had long been in the habit of defying limits. He stored the Xuan water pill and the other bottles away to be taken after the effect fully settled. After washing away the impurities the pill had expelled, he dressed and opened his door. A figure in the Empire's dark gold standard armor, aura solid as a mountain, had been waiting for him. Though the guard deliberately restrained his presence, Ming'an's energy vision still saw the man's spirit power as a burning, dense furnace, undoubtedly a titled Duluo. This was the guard and guide his grandfather had assigned. Without words, Ming'an nodded. The titled Duluo understood and led him out. They traveled to the military camp on Mingdu's outskirts, the garrison for the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Legion's reserve soldiers. On the vast training ground, earth-shaking shouts, heavy impacts, and the whoosh of weapons blended into a raw, fervent torrent of power. Under the hot sun, the smell of sweat and dust hung thick. Thousands of burly soldiers, stripped to the waist, underwent brutal physical and basic spirit ability training, daily essentials for reserve troops. They didn't go to the center. The titled Doluo led Ming'an to a shaded step at the edge of the field. The Doluo stood a few paces behind like bedrock, his presence an invisible barrier that isolated external disturbance. After a moment, about a dozen spirit elder rank soldiers, led by an officer, arrived and saluted. The officer knelt. "Young Master Ming'an, I am Wang Meng, your subordinate, sent by the Hallmaster. Please instruct us." Ming'an regarded Wang Meng for a beat, then waved his hand. "Begin. Show me your spirit abilities that enhance the physique. One by one." "Yes." Wang Meng acknowledged and signaled the soldiers. The first stepped forward, bellowed, and a gray bear phantom appeared behind him. His muscles swelled as if pumped full, coarse brown fur sprouted, and his hands became giant bear paws. He slammed his chest. The sound was a dull boom. He inhaled, and his first spirit ring lit. Yellow light surged into his limbs and acupoints. Muscles tensed further, veins bulged, and raw power radiated from him. Ming'an watched silently, energy vision active. He ignored flesh and bone and saw the soldier's spirit power circulating through his body. The eruption points were crude but obvious, and they coincided with acupoints known in his previous life as being key to strengthening physique and stimulating potential. Jianjing, Qiqi, Zusanli, Yongquan. Spirit power surged at those points during exertion. Spirit power stimulates acupoints in specific locations, and spirit power protects the meridians from overload, achieving short-term physique enhancement, he whispered. His eyes brightened. He knew his limits. Energy was powerful, but relying solely on it wouldn't be enough. With a mere 0.5 innate starting point, medicinal enhancement alone had limits. Following the traditional spirit master route, raising rank, absorbing a spirit ring for a breakthrough, then repeating, wouldn't work. He needed something bigger. The first step was a sufficiently powerful physique. This wasn't just a secondary development off the spirit master system. It was the beginning of getting the optimal configuration for his first spirit ring. Spirit ability, physique enhancement, spirit power circulation routes, acupoint stimulation, drawing in external energy. Ming'an watched soldier after soldier summon spirits and activate physique-boosting abilities. In his head, 3 streams of knowledge collided. The underlying code, his energy vision showed, the meridian and acupoint knowledge from his previous life, and his superior control over internal energy. They began to dissect and recombine. What if the spirit power circulation routes were optimized? What if acupoints that maximize potential and strengthen tendons, bones, and flesh were precisely stimulated? What if mental force guided the process to draw in and refine the world's elemental power more efficiently during body tempering, accelerating cultivation? What if, combining his control over internal energy, he could create a method that didn't rely on high spirit power ranks, instead excavating the human body's treasure trove to systematically and efficiently strengthen the physique? A new concept slowly took shape. Ming'an's energy vision kept scanning the soldier's spirit flow paths and acupoint stimulations with each exertion. His fingers traced invisible lines on his knee, mapping more efficient, intricate circulation routes in the void realm and marking critical energy nodes. Hours passed. Even with rotating spirit possession and abilities, the dozen soldiers before him eventually exhausted their spirit power and lay on the ground. Ming'an paused, frowning. Not enough samples. Too repetitive. Too narrow. I need more. He casually pulled more than 10 cards from his storage soul engineer bracelet and tossed them to Officer Wang Meng. 1,000 gold each per person. The rest is yours. Rotate people tomorrow and continue. Wang Meng caught them. 10 gold cards worth 1,000 each, and 1 purple card worth 10,000, and his eyes shone. Yes, sir. Another crisp military salute and eager compliance. Ming'an stood and walked away, protected by the titled Duluo, pondering. The basic framework for his body tempering method was set. What he needed now were massive real samples, practical cultivation trials, and verification through results. Since the foundational framework existed, the new system needed a name. Ming'an smiled faintly. Let's call it Body Cultivator. 3. The controller of the experiment. More than half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Over those 6 months, a topic, neither huge nor trivial, circulated through the upper circles of Mingdu. At its center was Kong Ming'an, the only grandson of His Excellency Kong Ming, and only 6.5 years old. The reason was simple. Every morning, rain or shine, that young master was personally escorted by a titled Duluo to the military camp outside the city, always on schedule. He had done this since the day he awakened his spirit. For a 6-year-old, the routine was conspicuous. He didn't attend school or receive tutoring at the Hall of Worship. What did he do all day in the military camp? Rumors swirled, but none were confirmed. The Hall of Worship had sealed all information about his spirit and innate spirit power. Outsiders only knew he had awakened a spirit. Everything else remained tightly guarded. Aside from the secrecy, another topic spread even more widely. The Kong family's young master was exceptionally handsome. Since awakening, perhaps because of his spirit, his temperament had become calm and composed beyond his years. Coupled with fine features, he left a strong impression on those who saw him. Many high officials of the Sun Moon Empire, with marriageable daughters, began to imagine alliances. After all, he was the sole bloodline heir of Kong Deming, the sole engineer pillar of the empire. In some ways, his status eclipsed that of many imperial princes. Approaching noon, inside the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy, the sun shone bright and the well-tended flower beds gave off a fresh, green scent. On the path, two children, also about 6, walked side by side, impossible to miss. The little girl moved with energy. Her soft silver hair fell to her shoulders and shimmered in the light. Her ice-blue eyes were not cold, just clear and childlike. Beside her walked a little boy with the same silver hair but heterochromatic eyes, one blue, one green, and a proud tilt to his expression. They were the grandchildren of Jing Hongqian, Hall Master of Mingde Hall and Dean of the Academy, Meng Hongqian and Xiao Hongqian. "Hey, big brother." Meng Hongqian plucked at a leaf and tilted her head at Xiao Hongqian. "I heard that Kong Ming'an is especially handsome. He goes to the military camp every day. Is it fun there?" Xiao Hongqian pouted. "What good is being handsome? Strength is what matters. He doesn't even come to the academy. How much strength could he possibly have?" At the academy's preparatory class, geniuses like Xiao and Meng Hongqian were admitted early to study spirit tool theory. Given their family background, they had learned about spirit tools since childhood and were already attending second-year classes. "Tsk, be modest, big brother. Maybe he'll be your future rival," Meng Hongqian teased in a mock-adult tone. "Humph, Xiao Hongqian's only rival is himself," Xiao Hongqian declared proudly. Meng Hongqian looked faintly exasperated. She hadn't much hope for her brother's humility. As the siblings chatted, a group hurried out of a nearby teaching building. Leading them was a tall, refined man in Mingde Hall's ornate red robe, their grandfather, Jing Hongqian. Beside him stood several students and a middle-aged man in the dark purple uniform of the Hall of Worship. Jing Hongqian paused when he saw his grandchildren. "Meng, Xiao, what are you doing here?" "Grandpa," the two children called together. Meng Hongqian ran forward. "We just finished class and we're about to eat." Jing Hongqian nodded, then turned to the man in purple. "Steward Lin, could you take the two little ones to broaden their horizons?" Steward Lin's gaze swept over the two finely formed children. He inclined his head slightly. "Of course, keep them quiet." "Good." Jing Hongqian then instructed the grandchildren, "Let's go." He tossed a flying spirit tool to the children, and the group took to the air together. Mid-flight, Meng Hongqian whispered, "Grandpa, where are we going?" "You'll see when we get there," Jing Hongqian replied with a smile, but his eyes flicked to Xiao Hongqian and the corner of his mouth lifted. He hoped his grandson's Dao heart wouldn't be shaken. They flew from the academy to Mingde Hall, which lay closer to the Sun Moon Imperial Palace. Passing a heavily guarded area and entering a special passage, the air grew dense, and the walls glinted with a metallic sheen that radiated security. After some time, they reached the Hall of Worship's core laboratory. The heavy alloy door slid open soundlessly, releasing the mixed scent of metal energy and precision instruments. Inside, the space was vast. Complex spirit tool devices flashed with light, while researchers in dark purple uniforms moved between them. Led by Steward Lin, Jing Hongqian and the children climbed to the second floor, a huge circular observation platform. More than a dozen people were gathered near the transparent protective wall, their faces solemn. Meng Hongqian scanned the crowd and recognized many familiar figures. The refined man with star-like eyes was Ye Yulin, the starry sky Duluo, as famous as her grandfather. A young man nearby was Crown Prince Shu Tianran, only 17, rumored to have a strong chance at the throne. At the very front stood the most important figure, Kong Deming, stern and dignified. Whenever Jing Hongqian spoke of him, his face grew serious, almost fearful. The others, polite, conversing in low voices, were powerful individuals wearing 9-level Soul Engineer badges. Compared with them, Meng Hongqian and her brother felt strangely out of place. A faint pressure pressed on the little girl. She edged closer to the glass and focused on the experimental field below. In the center stood a soldier with an exceptionally sturdy build, like a small iron tower. He was connected to a tangle of spirit tool sensor cables and fitted with simple armor for testing joint movement and strength, closely monitored by instruments. Meng Hongqun watched, curious if this was the world her grandfather often mentioned. Then, from a corner of the field, her eyes caught something else. A young boy, about her age, sat quietly apart from the test subject. He wore a white researcher's robe. His delicate face carried a calmness almost alien to someone so young. His ink-black eyes stared intently at the soldier. His small hands rested on his knees as if he were thinking, calculating. Who was he? Meng Hongqun wondered, and the boy's extraordinary looks captured her full attention. She pressed closer to the crowd, perched on tiptoe, her ice-blue eyes fixed on the quiet figure. Around her, the adults' hushed conversations reached her ears, every word heavy with expectation. Basic data recording complete. Elder Kong, can the energy dissipation rate be optimized further this time? Your Highness, if this project succeeds, the improvement to the foundational combat power of our Imperial Army will be immeasurable. The key is the universality and stability of this method. 6-year-old Meng Hongqun didn't understand all the technicalities, but she felt their weight. Everyone's attention seemed fixed on the soldier in the field, who sat like a small iron tower under countless cables and instruments. The atmosphere tightened. Then the boy in the corner moved. Quietly, precisely, he stood up as if a mechanism had been triggered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if an invisible signal had gone out, every murmured conversation on the observation platform stopped. Kong Deming lowered his head. Shu Tianran stepped forward, expression grave. Jing Hongqun's face showed shock and awe. All the 9-level soul engineers and attendants turned their gaze from the test subject to that small figure who had just risen. The platform fell into absolute silence. Meng Hongqun looked around at the important figures, bewildered. Then the boy lifted his head and looked up toward the second-floor platform. It was not aimed at any one person, not a plea for permission, more like a formal announcement. His clear, steady voice, confident and authoritative, carried across the protective barrier and filled the silent laboratory. The 5th periodic demonstration of the results of the body tempering method practice now begins. Chapter 4. The first demonstration of the body tempering method. Kong Ming'an was unhurried in the experimental field. After making sure everyone's attention was on him, his gaze dropped to the soldier standing motionless below. Calmly, almost as if reading a report, he said, "Test subject number 037, Spirit, Windbreaker Bear, Intermediate Spirit, Innate Spirit Power Rank 5, Age 20, Spirit Power Rank 31. Has undergone systematic cultivation of the body tempering method for 5 months and 7 days. During cultivation, his spirit power broke through to rank 32. His 3rd spirit ring's age, 2,100 years." At his words, the alloy door on the far side of the field slid open. A young man in military uniform strode in, no test cables, no armor. Well-built but slightly shorter than 37, he carried a sharp, arrogant look and obvious battle intent. A scorching heat seemed to trail his steps. Kong Ming'an continued, voice steady. Opponent, Reserve Soldier of the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Legion. Spirit, Blazing Flame Exploding Bear. Advanced Spirit, Innate Spirit Power Rank 7. Age 18. Spirit Power Rank 38. Has not undergone the body tempering method. His 3rd spirit ring's age, 1,500 years. Innate Spirit Power Rank 7 against Rank 5. Advanced Spirit against Intermediate Spirit. Rank 38 versus 31. 18 years old versus 20. On paper, the reserve soldier had an overwhelming advantage. On the second-floor observation platform, every eye was fixed on the 2 men below. Meng Hongqun unconsciously gripped the corner of Jing Hongqun's robe, her ice-blue eyes wide and unblinking. Xiao Hongqun beside them had set aside his usual arrogance. Confusion clouded his face. Kong Ming'an ignored the reactions above. He watched until both fighters were in place, then casually waved his hand. Begin. Roar. The reserve soldier activated his spirit without hesitation. Dark red fur erupted across his body, muscles bulging, his hands turning into giant claws wreathed in crimson flame. A scorching heat wave rolled outward. His 1st spirit ring flared yellow. Like a lit cannonball, he launched himself at 37, a roaring, air-cutting charge that displayed speed, strength, and a suffocating aura, every advantage of an advanced spirit wielder. But 037 did nothing. He did not activate his spirit or light a spirit ring. He planted his feet, sinking slightly into a solid defensive stance. Is he crazy? Xiao Hongqian frowned. No spirit ability, no spirit use, relying only on his physical body to take on an attack from a rank 38 advanced spirit master? Even if 037 were a spirit elder, the gap in spirit quality and spirit power was real. It looked like suicide. Just as the blazing claws were about to strike, 037 moved, only a hair's breadth, but perfectly timed. His body turned sideways a fraction before the flames hit. Boom! The blazing claws slammed into the alloy floor where he'd been standing, scorching marks gouged into the metal. The reserve soldier's eyes flashed with surprise, but he didn't slow. His second ring ignited. He swept his claws in a violent arc. Fan-shaped flames sealed off escape routes. His third ring flared purple, and he spat globes of crimson fire at 37's face. The attacks flowed with the deadly smoothness of battlefield experience. Still, 037 refused to use spirit power. He dodged calmly and precisely, each movement timed to the millimeter, relying on pure physical coordination and reflex. His evasion speed rivaled Guimei's. It was as if every muscle and bone responded to his will. This, Xiao Hongqian stared, stunned. Was this a spirit elder? An intermediate spirit who had just reached spirit elder, using his body to suppress an advanced spirit master who had long been in the spirit elder realm and was close to becoming a spirit ancestor? The reserve soldier grew anxious. His proud spirit techniques and the overwhelming flame suppression of his advanced spirit seemed to be blunted by this opponent. Spirit power drained from him rapidly, and every hit landed as if on cotton. Useless. Roar! In fury, he poured everything into his third ring. Purple light erupted. Flames surged, his claws locked together, condensing a violently burning, blazing flame exploding bomb, an all-out, reckless strike. At the moment the bomb neared release, a brief, critical instant, 037 moved. Still without any ring light, with nothing but pure, extreme physical force, he shifted. Hairline cracks spidered across the alloy beneath his feet. He blurred into an afterimage and closed the gap instantly. Then a single, lightning-fast straight punch struck the reserve soldier squarely in the face, which had been leaning forward from channeling power. Bang! A dull, ear-splitting thud. The blazing flame, exploding bomb's light vanished in an instant. The reserve soldier's triumphant grin froze into an expression of shock and agony. His body flew back several meters like a kite with a broken string, slammed into the ground, rolled twice, and lay motionless, unconscious. 037 slowly withdrew his fist. His breathing was steady. Aside from a sheen of sweat from the exertion, he bore no visible injuries. He glanced at the fallen opponent, bowed respectfully toward Kong Ming'an, and, at a casual wave from Kong, walked over to the assistant researchers to begin routine data recording. Silence on the second-floor platform deepened, heavier than when Kong Ming'an had first stood. The Rank 9 Soul Engineers and the Sun Moon Empire officials who had been invited to witness the demonstration stared down with incredulous, burning eyes. They watched the soldier who had felled a Rank 38 advanced spirit master using only his body. In that stunned quiet, Kong Ming'an stood out with unusual clarity. He raised his head slowly, his gaze sweeping across the frozen faces above, as if everything that had just happened had been expected. Without triumph or flourish, his calm voice, belying his youth, broke the silence. This is the result of 5 months' cultivation of the body tempering method. Everyone, are you satisfied? 5. Tilt resources and soul ring ideas. After a brief silence, an uncontrollable gasp of astonishment erupted from the second-floor observation platform. To defeat an advanced spirit master, whose spirit is 7 levels higher, relying only on his physical body, a 9th-rank soul engineer murmured. Fighting above one's rank wasn't unheard of, but doing so with such a complete disadvantage and depending solely on physical power, he had never seen anything like it. 5 months. In just 5 months, this body tempering method can truly turn decay into divinity. Young Master Kong is a prodigy. His understanding of energy and the human body is profound. Another middle-aged man from the Hall of Worship spoke excitedly, his eyes blazing with hunger for advancement. If we applied this to the Sun and Moon's Soul Engineer Legion, never mind everything else, the basic spirit tools and the carrying capacity of so many individual weapons would change the dynamics of lower-level battlefields. Ye Yulin, standing nearby, couldn't help but clap in admiration. Prince Shu Tianran remained silent, watching Kong Ming'an below with an expression that mixed shock, appraisal, and a faint undercurrent of apprehension, an oddly reverent intensity. Surely this looked like the eye of a king's advisor. Amid the largely sincere praise, Kong Deming, positioned at the front of the platform, kept his usual composed expression, though a fleeting trace of pride flickered in his eyes. "This is my grandson," he thought. He inclined his head slightly and said evenly, "You're all praising too highly. Ming'an is still young. He needs more refinement and guidance." His words were modest, but the protective tone was obvious. Everyone immediately agreed, with respectful enthusiasm. At that moment, the elevator behind them slid open, and Kong Ming'an stepped out. Hot, scrutinizing looks, some full of awe, fell on him. He hardly flinched. Ignoring the attention, he met his grandfather's and the other core figures' gazes and spoke in a steady voice. "You don't need to praise me. This is only the early-stage result of the body tempering method. After all, it's only been 5 months. More results will take more time and more resources." Jing Hongchen reacted fastest, his eyes gleaming with the keen eye of a businessman. Mingda Hall will fully support further research and development of this project. The resources, manpower, and facilities, we can provide them. His words were decisive, an official stance. Shu Tianran added slowly, with undeniable authority, "The Imperial Treasury can be opened to fund this project." Support and resources surged toward the 6.5-year-old like a tide. Kong Ming'an nodded slightly, feeling oddly like he had in his previous life after a presentation when a room full of corporate CEOs wanted to invest in his patent. He didn't reply to the offers. Instead, he looked at his grandfather. "Grandpa, I don't know the details. You can handle talking to them." Then he walked to an empty metal chair in the corner of the platform and sat down, taking himself out of the storm of offers. Kong Deming's face showed a helpless smile for a moment. Then he resumed his dignified composure and took charge of the negotiations. "All right, let's discuss cooperation and resource allocation in detail." Alone in the corner, Kong Ming'an tuned the noise out, leaning back against the cold metal and lowering his eyes. His thoughts returned to the body tempering method. Was it effective? Undoubtedly. It could systematically and significantly improve a spirit master's physical foundation, compensate for differences in spirit quality, raise the upper limit of spirit ring endurance, and even, in the early stage, enable one to fight above their rank. But its shortcomings were equally clear. Its ceiling. This method used spirit power and mental force to stimulate acupoints and draw in external elemental energy to temper muscles and bones. Fundamentally, it was too basic. It was like shaping iron with wood, effective in the early stage, but in the late stage it lost power. The human flesh, blood, muscles, and bones have limits. Simple spirit-powered body tempering cannot improve indefinitely. Once physical strength reaches a critical threshold, further gains fall off a cliff or stop altogether. A precise number flashed through his mind, 21.32%. Yes, the average cultivation effect for ordinary cultivators using a simplified version of his body tempering method would be only 21.32% of what he himself achieved. The huge gap came from differences in the precision of spirit control and utilization efficiency. Not everyone could manipulate spirit power with his accuracy. Kong Ming'an felt a small pang of regret. After all, it was a method he had developed in the first 6 months using thousands of samples. Flaws were to be expected. For the path of a body cultivator, this was only a starting point. There had to be advanced methods to break the shackles of the mortal body, ways to draw on deeper, foundational energy, or to develop more refined, efficient tempering techniques. Only then could the body cultivator system truly diverge from, and possibly surpass, the traditional spirit master system. Still, he wasn't anxious. Even an effect around 1/5 of his own was a world-changing leap for low and mid-level spirit masters, especially for rank-and-file soldiers. It would be enough to create a massive foundational group of body cultivators, a sample library and data source for future techniques. The current body tempering method and its subsequent tuning could meet present needs. He only had to wait for that sample library to mature, then collect data and continue deducing improvements. That work would be handled by the sun and moon higher-ups. That was why he had displayed his experimental results in the first place. It was mutual benefit. What he had to think about now was his own cultivation. With Schwan water pills and other medicines that could temporarily boost innate spirit power, his spirit power had risen from 0.5 to level 5 in half a year. His actual innate level was roughly level 4, probably the limit of what external materials he currently had access to could accomplish. Calculating from his current cultivation efficiency with full resources, and allowing for time he would need for upcoming research and daily body tempering exercises, he estimated he would reach level 10 between ages 8 and 9. Time was abundant. Pure body cultivation is a bit too limiting and not cool enough, he thought. I need to find time to recruit Jijuechen and study the sun and moon's lifespan spirit tool technology. Tool cultivator, or rather, sword cultivator. His thoughts wandered. Then he suddenly sensed two gazes trained on him. These were different from the profit-driven or astonished looks from the platform. They were pure curiosity and an unmistakable burning battle intent. He looked up. Not far behind Jing Hongchen stood a silver-haired, blue-eyed little girl as delicate as porcelain, blinking her big eyes at him without embarrassment, open astonishment and an obvious, so handsome appreciation. Beside her, an equally silver-haired boy with heterochromatic eyes stared at him with intense seriousness. Kong Ming'an's gaze swept briefly over Meng Hongchen, no more than half a second, then met Xiao Hongchen's burning stare. He showed no expression, only a perfunctory slight nod in their direction, then lowered his eyes and returned to thoughts of his first spirit ring. Meng Hongchen blinked and couldn't help whispering to Xiao Hongchen, "Big brother, he's really, really handsome." Xiao Hongchen paid no attention to her aside. After Kong Ming'an's brief nod, the fire in his eyes burned even brighter. He turned to Meng Hongchen and said more seriously, "You're right. He is my true opponent." Meng Hongchen froze. "Did I say something?" "No." "Big brother, are you trying to steal my handsome young man?" Little Meng Hongchen felt a sudden surge of vigilance toward her brother. 6. Soft-bone rabbit breeding farm and blue-silver grass cultivation base. The shock and clamor inside the laboratory didn't last long. Under Kong Deming's direction, preliminary agreements about cooperation and resource allocation for the body tempering method project were quickly reached. Before long, the high-ranking Sun-Moon officials left one after another, preparing to return and arrange the necessary resources. Before departing, Xu Tianran approached Kong Ming'an with a gentle smile. "Young Master Kong has extraordinary talent. Today's results were truly eye-opening. If you have the time in the future, you should visit my manor for a chat." There was a hint of recruitment in his words, wrapped in courtesy. Kong Ming'an only met the future Sun-Moon Emperor's gaze calmly and gave a slight nod. "Certainly," he said no more, neither rude nor eager to court favor. Xu Tianran's eyes flickered briefly, then he fell silent and left with his attendants. Jing Hongchen, walking last with his grandchildren, noticed their unusual demeanors and stopped, smiling at Kong Deming. "Old Kong, the children are close in age. Perhaps they should spend more time together. Meng and Xiao don't have many companions at the academy." Kong Deming didn't answer directly. "Ming'an is quiet and dislikes excitement," he said vaguely. "Children have their own fates. Letting things unfold naturally is best." Jing Hongchen smiled, patted his grandchildren's heads, and left the laboratory, with Meng Hongchen stealing glances back and Xiao Hongchen glaring with intensity. The heavy alloy door closed noiselessly behind them, shutting out the outside world. On the expansive second floor, only Kong Deming and Kong Ming'an remained. The instruments hummed, sharper in the sudden quiet. A strange silence settled between grandfather and grandson. They did not discuss the body tempering method, the flood of resources about to arrive, or the follow-up plans. Kong Deming walked over, and instead of sitting in the chair beside Ming'an, leaned in and placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. His usual authoritative gaze had softened into pure concern. "Ming'an," he said in a low, gentle voice wholly different from the department head he had been moments ago, "you've been pushing yourself too hard lately." Kong Ming'an paused. Have I? Zhou Ping told me you've hardly rested these last few days. Zhou Ping was the steward of the Kong family. Kong Deming, busy with politics and research, often left the family's daily affairs to the steward. Kong Ming'an fell silent for a moment. He wasn't a transmigrated soul, but an awakening. He'd recovered memories from a previous life. Over the past 6 years, he remembered clearly how, between political affairs and experiments, his grandfather still found time to care for him. In his previous life, he had been an orphan. Having relatives now was something he had never experienced before. A small smile curved Kong Ming'an's lips. Don't worry, Grandpa. I have things under control. The beginning is always the hardest, but now that we've started, it won't be like this for long. Kong Deming nodded, saying little more, but showing complete trust. As long as you do. They chatted about small, unimportant things. Kong Deming didn't press his grandson about the origins of those astonishing ideas, and Kong Ming'an didn't volunteer the complex derivations and data. They simply sat together in a peaceful, familiar way. That afternoon in Ming City at the Kong family manor, sunlight filtered through carved windows, dappling the study's carpet. After a simple meal, Kong Ming'an summoned Steward Zhao to the study. Zhou had served the family for decades, loyal and impeccably reliable. He stood respectfully, hands folded. Young master, what are your instructions? Kong Ming'an sat behind a desk that seemed a bit too large for him, his small hands folded on the surface. Uncle Zhou, how are the soft-bone rabbit breeding farm and the blue-silver grass cultivation base progressing? Is everything going smoothly? Zhou's face showed a practiced mixture of understanding and respect. Reporting to young master, everything is proceeding steadily according to your plan. Progress is very smooth. The soft-bone rabbit breeding farm is located in an area with relatively gentle spirit power. The breeding stock has been screened and shows good adaptability. They're breeding stably. Per your instructions, the feed is mixed with trace medicinal herbs that encourage mild spirit power absorption. The young rabbits' growth and physique are noticeably superior to ordinary soft-bone rabbits, and their temperaments are docile and controllable. As for the blue-silver grass cultivation base, Zhou continued, we picked a valley where the earth's vitality is strong and installed the rotational spirit power nourishment formation you provided. The blue-silver grass is thriving, leaves are thick, and the vitality in the roots and stems is purer and more concentrated. The first batch of high-quality transplants has rooted stably. Large-scale planting is imminent. Kong Ming'an listened and nodded in satisfaction. What he needed was a reliable, controllable source of spirit beast resources, and improved quality at that. Very good, he said. Carry on with the plan. Keep observing and record every subtle change. Don't spare expense. Guarantee quality. Once the soft-bone rabbits reach 10-year quality, send a few to my laboratory first. Yes, young master. This old servant understands. Zhou bowed and withdrew quietly. Peace returned to the study. Kong Ming'an's expression was calm. The breeding farm and cultivation base were parts of his broader plans. Choosing the somewhat odd combination of soft-bone rabbits and blue-silver grass was essentially opportunistic. Blue-silver grass was the plant material he had decided on, and he wanted a spirit beast with a short breeding and maturation cycle to replace the lab mice he'd used in his previous life. He had asked Steward Zhao to find options with short cycles. Zhou had investigated and recommended the soft-bone rabbit. Ming'an had been intrigued and agreed. He had particular ideas for his first spirit ring. Ordinary century or millennia-old spirit rings would be boring. To make things interesting required practical application. Low-level spirit beasts like soft-bone rabbits are easy to raise. With a little effort and technology, they could produce a batch of 10-year quality rabbits each year. A 10-year cultivated soft-bone rabbit could yield a spirit ring when killed, the research material he needed. And, true to his frugal streak, any rabbits that didn't survive could be put to use as food, cold shredded rabbit or spicy rabbit heads, making the most of everything. Time flew, and another 2 months slipped quietly past the walls of Mingdu. Beneath the surface, currents churned through the empire's upper echelons. Several main imperial legions were being secretly expanded and re-equipped at full throttle. Vast resources were quietly mobilized and integrated, everything tied to a hall of worship project codenamed Cornerstone. Trainees practicing the body tempering method were being promoted from ordinary soldiers to instructors, quietly beginning to reshape the physiques of the Empire's lower-ranking troops. All of this was confined to the most inner circles. To the outside world, everything appeared calm. In the Kong family manor, in the backyard training ground, Ming'an and the Hongchen siblings were gathered. "Ming'an, can drinking this really make you stronger?" Meng Hongchen asked uncertainly. "Guaranteed," Kong Ming'an replied with a light laugh as he looked at Meng Hongchen and her brother Xiao Hongchen, both wearing conflicted expressions, and then at Jing Hongchen, who had been sent to him a month earlier under the pretense of peer exchange and mutual progress. He had seen through Jing Hongchen's intention at a glance, an attempt to forge a connection. At first he'd been puzzled. Logically, his grandfather should have refused. But not only did his grandfather not refuse, he'd personally brought Meng Hongchen, Xiao Hongchen, and the rather ornamental Jing Hongchen to invite him, speaking with an odd solemnity. That had flustered Ming'an. Later, when he saw his grandfather's expression, he understood. The old man worried Ming'an would get ill from being cooped up in the lab and wanted him to meet more people his age for his own mental health. So Ming'an had no reason to refuse. He picked up his portion and, as if demonstrating, downed it in one gulp. The effect was immediate, but the taste was indescribable. After a small mental complaint, he walked to the center of the training ground, took a deep breath, set his stance, and began his body tempering method practice for the day. Horse stance, opening and closing pushes, bow stance punches, then a series of odd postures of stretching, twisting, and compressing muscles and bones. His movements weren't flashy, they were merely auxiliary. What mattered was the spirit power flowing inside him. As the spirit power activated his acupoints, his skin flushed crimson with a change visible to the naked eye. Wisps of scorching white qi rose from his pores and coalesced into a cloud of steam around him. A blistering aura radiated outward. For a moment, the temperature in the training ground climbed several degrees. Beside him, the muscles and fascia under his skin rippled and tightened like coiling dragons, punctuated by the subtle, dense popping of bones. Xiao Hongchen watched, took a deep breath, and as if having made up his mind, tilted his head back and gulped down his potion with a long, noisy swallow. "Together," he said, and moved to Ming'an's side to adopt a stance and begin. Meng Hongchen couldn't fathom her brother's competitive streak, but seeing both of them drink, her face fell. She pinched her nose, closed her eyes, and with a resigned huff, drank the potion in quick succession. Ugh! So bitter, so spicy, and sour. Tears nearly welled up in her eyes. She stuck out her tongue and fanned herself with her hands, feeling as if her whole body were on fire. Seeing the two boys turned crimson and the heat waves shimmering in the air, her face paled. This was supposed to be a pleasant training session with a handsome young man. How had it turned into this? Still, she gritted her teeth and stumbled to join them. The heat waves intensified across the training ground. Time crawled in agonizing torment. By noon, Kong Ming'an slowly ended his practice. The crimson in his skin faded and the steam dissipated, leaving him slightly warm and dotted with a thin sheen of sweat. He exhaled slowly, steady and long, as if the furnace-like session had been only a warm-up. The Hongchen siblings were drenched and panting, but they persisted. They had taken less potion than he had and needed longer to digest it, an effect of different body-tempering method efficiencies. Still, with the potion's help, their efficiency reached about 40% of Kong Ming'an's, roughly double their usual 20%. Kong Ming'an did not leave immediately. He sat cross-legged at the edge of the ground, closed his eyes, and guided his spirit power along chosen channels, sensing his meridians and physique. 8 months had passed since his spirit awakening. The first 3 months had been a harsh period of exploration, testing, deducing, and repeatedly adjusting the body tempering method on himself. The next 5 months had been him enjoying the astonishing benefits of the method. The effects were obvious. While his spirit power rank rose at its usual pace, the strength of his physical body climbed far faster than his spirit rank. Through precise soul engineer instrumentation and his own sensing, his comprehensive physical indicators, raw physical strength, defense, speed, reaction, and endurance, had steadily reached the level of a rank 20 advanced beast spirit master in spirit avatar state. He had achieved that without attaching a first spirit ring and with 0 spirit power bonus to his physique. At the current rate, Ming'an estimated that within a year, by continuing his body-tempering cultivation and excavating his body's potential, his physique could challenge the spirit ancestor level. After that, the rapid phase of progress would end. With the remaining 10 months or so, plus the 10,000-year whale glue and several other heaven and earth treasures he had prepared to strengthen foundations, cultivate origin, and temper muscles and bones, he might push this body to the baseline of Spirit King strength before he turned 9, and just as his spirit power approached breaking rank 10. A 10,000-year first spirit ring? Outrageous? Please, given the entire Sun Moon Empire's resources tilted toward him and several Soul Engineer legions and reserve units serving as a sample pool to continuously refine the body tempering method, attempting a 100 or 1,000-year first spirit ring would be far too modest. Still, there were limits. According to current data, pure body tempering method effects began to decline at Spirit Ancestor. After Spirit King, the benefit dropped to 1/5 of its original effect, progress crawled at Spirit Emperor, and the method reached its ceiling at Spirit Saint. Easy to start, hard to master, Ming'an muttered inwardly. In late stages, it even depends more on talent than the traditional Spirit Master system. Being a body cultivator is still tough. He wasn't overly disappointed. This was only for now. Chapter 8. Cabbage-Eating Pig. After the cultivation session, they were served a specially prepared medicated meal to replenish what their bodies had lost. Xiao Hongqian ate weakly. He looked far worse than Miss Meng, who sat beside him. Because someone had left early that morning, Xiao's competitive streak had pushed him to force a breakthrough, accelerating his progress with the body tempering method. The payoff was a brutal crash afterward. Xiao, you don't need to push yourself so hard. With your talent, if you advance step by step and keep up the body tempering method, reaching level 20 by 9 and binding a 1,000-year spirit ring shouldn't be hard, Ming'an said, unable to help but remind his little friend. I know, Xiao rubbed his temples. He felt a headache he couldn't explain. I just don't understand. He still couldn't get his head around it. Innate full spirit power, a top-tier 3-legged golden-toed spirit with divine beast bloodline, and a metal control spirit talent, perfect for a soul engineer. From the day his spirit awakened until 2 months ago, Xiao had considered himself the #1 genius of the Sun and Moon region, destined for fame across the continent. That wasn't empty boasting. He really had that potential. But ever since he had followed his grandfather Jing Hongqian to see the world, doubts had crept in. What exactly was that boy in front of him? He had assumed Ming'an was the same kind of prodigy, innate spirit power, strong talent. Then 1 month after they met, Xiao challenged him and was knocked flat by the sheer physical strength of the other. Only afterward did he learn the baffling fact. Ming'an's innate spirit power was 0.5. Xiao sighed and looked at Ming'an. He could see that Ming'an's cultivation effects from the body tempering method were several times better than his own. The pain Ming'an's body had endured in forging that strength must have been many times over too. Still, seeing Ming'an composed and seemingly fine while his own hands felt weak, Xiao couldn't help but blurt out, "Even now, I still can't believe your innate spirit power is 0.5. The level of innate spirit power has nothing to do with intelligence," Ming'an replied coolly. "Intelligence," Xiao muttered, trying the word on like a puzzle piece that wouldn't fit. His brain itched with an odd, indescribable discomfort. Miss Meng's expression shifted. Her ice-blue eyes flicked up as if something had caught her. Intelligence? Did he mean my brother isn't intelligent? She met Ming'an's gaze, curious. Ming'an was startled, then offered a small, involuntary smile and gave a slight nod. Miss Meng's face brightened. She quickly looked away and cleared her throat to keep from laughing aloud. Her older brother sometimes didn't seem to use his head much, but she couldn't laugh. She didn't want to bruise his pride. Xiao, who had been turning over the word in his head, saw his sister and Ming'an exchanging glances. Panic flared in him. Something's not right. Very not right. I treat you as a rival, and you're hitting on my sister? In an instant, Xiao's eyes flared with battle intent. Ming'an blinked, uneasily amused. Was this boy taking the wrong medicine again? Fueled by a surge of combative resolve, Xiao threw himself back into cultivation after lunch. Body tempering method in the morning, meditation in the afternoon, spirit tool study in the evening, and meditation in place of sleep. He filled his days to the brim and vowed to challenge Ming'an again once he had earned his second spirit ring. Seeing Xiao storm off, Ming'an's lips twitched. He glanced at Miss Meng. "Your brother, he—" Miss Meng rubbed her forehead unconsciously. "It's nothing. He'll be fine. He always gets like this for a while." She spoke with the helpless but familiar tone of someone who had seen this act many times. Then she turned to Ming'an. "Come on, Ming'an. You promised to study with me today. Don't back out." Without hesitation, she reached for his hand and, very naturally, pulled him toward the laboratory. Xiao hadn't gone far when he saw his sister take Ming'an's hand and run toward the lab. He was dumbstruck. "The good cabbage has been snatched by a pig?" he thought, incredulity written all over his face. Meanwhile, the cabbage and pig pair arrived at the laboratory. It was brightly lit and stocked with high-grade equipment. This lab was used occasionally by Ming'an's grandfather and matched the standards of a ninth-grade Seoul engineer's workspace. Miss Meng glanced around with faint curiosity. She'd visited her grandfather Jing Hongchen's lab as a child and found much of the layout familiar. Then she noticed the cages lined up neatly by the experimental platform, each one holding a soft bones rabbit with snowy white fur. "This is," she began. "Materials," Ming'an said evenly, watching her closely as her expression changed. He had been considering adding an assistant for some time. Most research couldn't be completed alone. An assistant would have sped up the early framework construction of his body tempering method. What had taken him 3 months might have taken only one with capable helpers. He'd been too busy during the initial research period to look for anyone, but now he had time, and his grandfather had just sent 2 likely candidates to keep him company. After a month of trial companionship, Miss Meng had become his trainee assistant. Xiao, on the other hand, was better suited to be an executor for practical experiments rather than a theoretical researcher. Ming'an approached the cages and casually plucked a pure white soft bones rabbit from one. His breeding operation wasn't mature yet. This rabbit had been trapped in the spirit beast forest for a fee. It was livelier and more vigorous than the samples he'd encountered before, and there was a flicker of spirit in its eyes. Sensing danger, the rabbit began to struggle violently, trying to escape. Ming'an ignored the thrashing. With a swift twist, he snapped its neck. For a moment, the lab was silent. Then a ripple of soft light and a faint fluctuation of spirit power rose from the rabbit's corpse, an iridescent white spirit ring. Ming'an reached out and gently grasped it, holding it up to the light. Kong Ming'an lowered his eyes. Thin threads of blue spirit power rose from his fingertips, coiling around the pure white spirit ring in his palm and making it look dreamlike and unreal. Meng Hongchen was momentarily stunned. You could actually touch a spirit ring? Or was it being bound and pulled by spirit power? She remembered that this was how spirit rings were absorbed. As she stood there puzzled, Kong Ming'an spoke slowly. "Meng, what do you think a spirit ring is?" "A spirit ring?" Meng Hongchen blinked, wondering why he would ask such a question. Seeing his serious expression, she hesitated, then gave the textbook answer out of habit. "A spirit ring is a special energy entity left after a spirit master hunts a spirit beast. When a spirit master reaches a bottleneck, absorbing a spirit ring lets them break through. After it's absorbed, it grants the spirit master a unique spirit ability. Control over spirit power relates to one's own spirit and the spirit beast the ring came from." Kong Ming'an nodded, not contradicting her, but he pressed on. "Aside from attaching a spirit ring to break a bottleneck and gaining spirit abilities, Meng, do you know of any other uses for a spirit ring?" She blinked, stumped by the new question, and instinctively shook her head. "No, isn't a spirit ring just for absorbing and getting spirit abilities?" To Meng and most spirit masters, a spirit ring was the ladder of advancement and the source of power. Attaching and absorbing to gain abilities was natural and unquestioned. Kong Ming'an smiled faintly and kept his eyes on the ring in his palm, as if admiring a precise work of art. From the information I've gathered, there are several unusual ways to use spirit rings, he said. 10,000 years ago, an elder of the Nine Treasures glazed tile sect mastered a method called ring embedding. He embedded a spirit ring onto his own spirit and doubled its power. The Heaven Soul Empire's dark underworld sect, whose inheritance includes a divine beast bloodline talent, can temporarily combine and fuse spirit rings, allowing a spirit ancestor to temporarily possess a 10,000-year ring's strength. There are also techniques called spirit ring fusion that can merge rings of different attributes into a single attribute, enhancing someone or doubling output. He listed these obscure methods calmly, like naming long-forgotten tools. Each term opened a sealed door of possibility. Meng Hongqin's ice-blue eyes widened. So a spirit ring could be used in such ways? Before she could fully process it, Kong Ming'an's blue spirit threads shifted. They became fine needles and pierced the seemingly stable energy structure inside the ring. Buzz! The pure white ring flared with blinding light and became violently unstable. Its gentle energy fluctuations turned into turbulent chaos. A dangerous aura pressurized the air. Instinctively, Meng took a step back. Kong Ming'an, however, stayed composed. He tossed the ring into a transparent isolation box made of high-strength, explosion-proof spirit tool glass and sealed it. Boom! A muffled but powerful explosion rocked the interior of the box. Blinding white light and chaotic energy currents filled the small space. The spirit tool array patterns on the glass blazed to life, flickering wildly as they strained to contain the destructive energy. Nothing escaped. Gradually, the light dimmed, leaving only wisps of chaotic energy inside the box. The Softbones rabbit's spirit ring had vanished, as if it had never existed. What was that? This is ring explosion, Kong Ming'an said, withdrawing his hand as if he'd only popped a soap bubble. It's a technique that violently detonates and releases the massive energy stored in a spirit ring, the same energy that supports spirit abilities and amplifies spirit power. He glanced at the residual currents inside the box. The explosion just now was roughly equivalent to a level 3 fixed-load spirit tool bomb. In some sects, they use the energy released by ring explosion to temporarily boost combat power, and from that practice they developed various fighting methods. Meng listened intently. At first, she had been curious about secrets. After seeing it, she now understood that Kong Ming'an's words were practical, not mere lore. She quickly seized the key point and, like a well-behaved student, raised her hand a little, eager to learn. Kong Ming'an chuckled. Want to learn ring explosion? Meng quickly shook her head. No. He feigned disappointment. Ah, that's a pity. She mentally scolded herself. Being taught is a favor, not an obligation, but she couldn't deny a flash of disappointment. The demonstration had been tantalizing and abrupt. It's not that I won't teach you, he said. It's that there's no need. No need? She echoed. Correct. He plucked another soft-bones rabbit, twisted its neck, and a pure white spirit ring appeared. He casually grabbed it and looked down as he spoke slowly. Simple ring explosion is the crudest use of a spirit ring's energy. He leaned forward, voice growing intent. If energy can be detonated and guided to amplify combat, couldn't it also be used to create a concentrated impact to break through a bottleneck? Say a spirit grandmaster breaking to spirit elder, a spirit emperor to spirit saint, or even a spirit doluo to a titled doluo. Could the instantaneous release from a ring explosion be used to push a breakthrough? Or could the burst be constrained and shaped, made controllable, normalized offensive or defensive techniques? For example, the explosion from a 10-year ring is comparable to a level 3 fixed-load bomb. What about a 1,000-year, 10,000-year, or 100,000-year ring? You should know that spirit rings recover over time. If you could use them repeatedly, you could, in theory, have unlimited access to explosion power equivalent to a level 9 fixed-load spirit tool, and you wouldn't have to half-kill yourself each time you used it. Under Meng's gaze, his expression shifted. A quiet obsession had crept into his voice. Even more, he continued, is it possible to completely dismantle a spirit ring structure, erase the spirit ability information and the spirit beast imprint it contains, and retain only the purest energy origin? Then attach a brand new spirit ring yourself. Achieve what I'd call self-editing and reconstruction of the spirit ring. A level 10 spirit ring. Isn't it incredible? Meng Hongqin's mind went blank. Her head was buzzing. Ring explosion cultivation? A controllable ring explosion? Explode and then be replaced? And self-editing and reconstruction of a spirit ring? All of it overturned everything she thought she knew about spirit rings. They could be used like this? She murmured to herself, bewildered and breathless. Spirit rings can be used in so many unbelievable ways. Of course, Kong Ming'an smiled, amused by Miss Meng's stunned expression. With a tone that was half playful, half serious, he began slowly. Everything's possible. Rules exist to be understood, to be used, and finally, to be broken and turned into the foundation for new rules. That's what I want. Meng Hongqin's ice-blue eyes flickered. What he just hinted at opened up a brand new world for her. Compared to the distant, textbook world of spirit masters and soul engineers the Academy taught, the one Kong Ming'an described now felt infinitely more fascinating and vast. Her interest sharpened into intensity. You want to teach me? You will? She had braced for refusal and was taken aback. After a heartbeat, she looked up to read his face. Disbelief lit her features. Really? I can? You can, but... Kong Ming'an's lips curved. Answer one question to my satisfaction, and I'll teach you. Meng hesitated a moment, and then nodded solemnly. All right. Kong Ming'an nodded back and glanced once more at the translucent white spirit ring resting in his hand. This time, he didn't detonate it. Instead, he covered his palm with a far more precise, gentle current of spirit power and tightened his hand slowly. There was no violent backlash, no blinding flash. Under the guidance and kneading of the spirit threads in his palm, the perfectly round, stable ring began to deform as if it were soft putty. Its edges lost their smooth curve, stretched and twisted by an invisible force until it took on an irregular shape, like dough being worked. The ring still shimmered and pulsed, but its physical form was forcibly altered. Meng Hongqin held her breath, eyes fixed, afraid to miss a single detail. Maintaining the ring's distorted shape, Kong Ming'an looked at her and spoke quietly. If a spirit ring can be artificially deformed and stay that way for a long time, what new ideas does that give you about the ring itself? New ideas. Meng's brows knit as she stared at the oddly kneaded ring. Spirit ring, deformation, sustained shape. Her thoughts collided and recombined at speed. A spirit ring is an energetic body. An energy body can be shaped if it can be shaped and held, a long-term maintained shaped energy body. Suddenly, a lightning flash of insight cut through the haze. A concept she knew intimately popped into her mind. Spirit tool? She blurted it out, excitement warping her voice. Like a spirit tool, using a spirit ring as metal, using a spirit ring to build a spirit tool. Kong Ming'an's smile widened. Her curiosity, her associative thinking, her ability to draw broad inferences, she had exactly the instincts he wanted in an assistant. Correct. Relief flooded her for reasons she couldn't quite name. She looked from his satisfied expression to the ring in his hand, now no longer ring-shaped, and then to the idea she'd just voiced. The possibility felt absurd and tantalizing. Tentatively, she asked, "Really? Can it be done like that?" Kong Ming'an only smiled and reached with his free left hand to the nearby cage. He plucked out another soft-bones rabbit. Under Meng's watchful gaze, he twisted the creature's neck to the right, coaxing a translucent white spirit ring to emerge, and then the blue spirit threads returned. Meng took a step back without meaning to. His movements were the same as when he'd performed the ring explosion for her earlier. Before she could steady her thoughts, she saw the threads penetrate the ring. The ring flared as before, but Kong Ming'an didn't toss it into the transparent isolation box. He held it in his palm where he had been kneading it, and the ring flowed and stretched like liquid metal. In a blink, it reformed into a glove, as thin as a cicada's wing, and emitting a steady, translucent white glow, which wrapped seamlessly over his right hand. At the instant before the explosion, his 5 fingers spread, and he grasped the exploding ring exactly as it detonated. There was no ear-splitting blast. Instead, there came a grinding, tearing sound, as if the fabric of space itself were being squeezed. Meng watched, heart slamming, as the explosive energy strong enough to melt steel, seemed to hit an invisible barrier at the edge of Kong Ming'an's translucent glove. The violent force churned and roared inside that 5-fingered cage, but could not push past the glove's edge by so much as a hair. Every ounce of the explosion was locked within his palm. Under extreme restraint, the blast dimmed like a fire being starved of fuel. In just a few breaths, what would have been an attack comparable to the explosion of a level 3 fixed-load spirit tool cannonball collapsed and dissipated under the absolute containment of that glove, turning into nothing. Kong Ming'an stood there quietly, then withdrew his hand as if nothing had happened. Meng's expression froze. The instant reshaping of a spirit ring, catching an exploding ring with bare hands, the annihilation of the energy by absolute confinement. Was it all real? Kong Ming'an's eyes were calm as he slowly lifted his right hand, still sheathed in the thin white glove. The glove, formed from the ring itself, moved like a part of his skin, faintly glowing as it shifted. Then, as though its energy had been spent, it dissolved into specks of starlight and vanished. He looked at his unscarred fair palm, then back to Meng's small, shocked face. A wry smile tugged at his lips. With a casual chuckle, he said, "Spirit rings, aren't they amazing? 11. Let me revive the Kong family bloodline." Xiao Hongchen had started to notice his younger sister acting strangely. It made sense that she spent every day at Kong Ming'an's cold laboratory. After all, following someone to cultivate could be brutal. The medicine tasted like poison. The body tempering method kept updating and forcing you to relearn it, but the gains in cultivation and physique were undeniable. What unsettled him was what happened after Meng Hongchen came back from the lab. Every time she returned, she was carrying a thick stack of books or notebooks and would bury her nose in them so intently she didn't even hear her own brother calling. He could tolerate that. What made his heart race, though, was the content of those books. He had sneaked a few peeks at the covers and some pages, detailed explanations of human meridians and acupoints, treatise on the circulation of tendons, bones, qi, and blood, preliminary exploration of the origin of life, and even an atlas of human physiological structure. Even worse, at mealtimes, when Meng Hongchen had always been a picky but eager eater who favored sweets, she'd recently wrinkle her nose at the table, press her hand to her mouth, and look nauseated at the sight of food. Human anatomy books, queasiness around meat, running to Kong Ming'an's place every day. Those images ran through Xiao Hongchen's head until a terrifying conclusion formed. He couldn't keep quiet any longer. After lunch one day, he pulled Kong Ming'an aside. "Kong Ming'an, be honest. What have you done to my sister?" Kong Ming'an blinked. He listened to the unprecedented seriousness and barely veiled indignation in Xiao Hongchen's tone and had no idea what he meant. All he'd done was put together some teaching materials for her, have her help record experimental data, explain a bit of basic energy theory, and let her start some hands-on practice. What else could there be? "Don't play dumb," Xiao Hongchen snapped. "Meng has been reading books about human meridians every day. She gets nauseous at the sight of food. She's at your place all the time. You," he went on, his voice heavy with accusation, "you have to take responsibility for her." Kong Ming'an stared. He turned reflexively toward the dining table and saw Meng Hongchen pushing away a plate of spicy rabbit head, pale and frowning. His gaze flicked between her expression and the dish, then back to Xiao Hongchen's words about anatomical texts. An absurd and wildly inappropriate misunderstanding began to assemble in his mind. He rubbed his forehead, feeling an odd headache. Meng was very cute, yes, but he wasn't some kind of pervert. Such thoughts would be disastrous. He sighed and tried to explain. "You're overthinking. I haven't done anything. As for why she looks sick at the sight of food, maybe it's because she's been having extra meals lately." Since the spirit ring experiments began, dozens of soft-bones rabbits had to be sacrificed in the lab every day. Wasting all that meat felt wrong, so they started experimenting with different ways to cook rabbit. The novel methods tasted good, and Meng Hongchen had gotten a bit addicted. Too many snacks had driven down her appetite for ordinary meals. Extra meals? Xiao Hongchen snorted in disbelief. That was the reason she was acting like that? He still didn't buy it. He was convinced Kong Ming'an was dodging responsibility. He was about to launch into another accusation when Meng Hongchen peeked out from the side. She saw Kong Ming'an's helpless look and her brother's angry face and seemed to reach a decision in an instant. "Brother, what are you trying to do now?" Xiao Hongchen opened his mouth. "No, little sister, he wasn't the one trying to do anything. it was the man beside her. But before he could correct her, Meng Hongchen wrapped an arm around Kong Ming'an and pulled him close. Ming'an is very good to me, big brother. You just focus on your cultivation. Don't worry about me. She led Kong Ming'an away. Xiao Hongchen watched them go, a bit stunned, but didn't stop them. It wasn't that he disliked the man. He only felt his sister was giving herself away too readily and might be taken advantage of. Still, unsure, he went to tell his grandfather about what he'd seen. A few hours later, Kong Deming arrived at the laboratory, accompanied by Jing Hongchen, and once everything was explained, the misunderstanding cleared up quickly. Jing Hongchen, who had been torn between worry and relief, let out a long breath and left with Xiao Hongchen and Meng Hongchen. That left just Kong Deming and Kong Ming'an alone in the lab. I didn't expect you to come in person, grandfather, Kong Ming'an said softly, looking at the dignified elder. It concerns you, Kong Deming replied calmly, and this is no small matter. Kong Ming'an's heart sank. As the current sole heir of the Kong family, he knew much of the family's history. Long ago, the Kong clan had blood ties to the Sun Moon imperial family and had been noble with a strong bloodline until the family head chose the wrong side and the clan was purged. Only his grandfather survived thanks to a personal favor from the former emperor. From then on, his grandfather had become the last of the Kong line. Kong Ming'an's father had been born and raised normally and later had him, but not long after Kong Ming'an's birth, both his parents died in a spirit tool experiment accident. It had been an accident, not foul play, but it left him truly alone as the family's only descendant. His grandfather had doted on him ever since, protective and meticulous in raising him. With that heavy history in mind, Kong Ming'an asked with reluctance, "Grandfather, you're not going to ask me to revive the Kong family bloodline, are you?" Kong Deming looked at him oddly, then shook his head. "Not that." Kong Ming'an let out a long, relieved breath and picked up a glass of water to wet his throat. "That's good." He relaxed a little, then froze as Kong Deming continued. "The Emperor intends to betroth a princess to you." Kong Ming'an, usually so composed, turned pale. He pointed at himself, incredulous. "No? Huh?" Chapter 12. Ring-Quenching Method. Nothing was more unbearable than suddenly discovering you might already have a fiancé. At least, that was how Kong Ming'an felt. After confirming several times that his grandfather wasn't joking, he completely lost his composure. His thoughts were a tangle. He rubbed his temples, a headache pulsing as he stammered, "I'm not even 7 yet." Many people already have children in their teens. For you, it's only a few years. You won't be late, Kong Deming said calmly. Influenced by the memories of the 20-plus years from his previous life, Kong Ming'an found that answer unacceptable. He tried to push back again. "Is it compulsory?" Kong Deming glanced at him. "What do you think?" All right, Kong Ming'an got the message. The so-called princess betrothal probably wasn't just the Sun Moon Emperor's idea. His grandfather had agreed to it as well. Seriously, he'd just been given a fiancé? He fell into thought. Seeing his grandson's downcast face, Kong Deming chuckled and tried to console him. "Ming'an, don't worry. His Majesty hasn't decided which princess to betroth to you yet. You're pretty free for now. Besides, it's just one princess. His Majesty knows our Kong family's bloodline is rare. It won't be an obstacle. Of course, if there were many, it's better not to make it public, at least for the imperial family's reputation." "No, wait," Kong Ming'an cut him off, bewildered. "When did I say I wanted more than one?" Kong Deming looked puzzled. "Then you don't want that little girl from the mortal world family?" "She's an assistant I want to cultivate." Kong Deming paused for a moment, then narrowed his eyes and said nostalgically, "Your father said the same thing back then." Kong Ming'an was full of question marks. So that's how matchmaking works here. The grandfather and grandson argued at length about the betrothal, but reached no real conclusion. For Kong Ming'an, it wasn't a big deal. He'd only been stunned at the absurdity. Something he hadn't achieved in more than 20 years in his previous life had been decided for him before he was 10 in this one. It was hard to comment on. Fortunately, such surprises didn't happen every day. Life soon returned to its routines. Arduous cultivation, soul engineer experiments, and probing the mysteries of spirit rings. Time slipped like sand through his fingers. Before he knew it, Kong Ming'an was 7 and a half. Deep within the hall of worship, in a high-security laboratory, the air was thick and instruments around the room flashed with steady lights. White-robed technicians adjusted their equipment. In the center of the field stood a capable officer, solemn and meticulous. Wang Meng, the ambitious officer Kong Ming'an had met when he first went to the Soul Engineer Legion's reserve station. 6 spirit rings, yellow, yellow, purple, purple, black, and black, slowly rotated beneath his feet, the aura of a spirit emperor undeniable. Kong Ming'an stood a short distance behind him. His small frame looked tiny in the vast field, but he carried an aura of control. Beside him, Meng Hongchen wore a fitted lab coat and held a clipboard, her ice-blue eyes fixed on the central subject. After nearly a year of study and hands-on guidance, she had picked up a researcher's calm and focused demeanor. Glancing at his father on the observation deck above, Kong Ming'an's voice was steady. "Begin." Wang Meng closed his eyes, adjusted his state, took a deep breath, and opened them sharply. Without spirit possession or using spirit abilities, he took his stance. Then, bang! A crisp, powerful sound split the air as the yellow spirit ring beneath Wang Meng's feet exploded. Power surged through his body, and though he only frowned slightly, he adapted quickly. He moved his mind and triggered 3 more explosions beneath him, yellow, purple, purple, each detonating in quick succession. Bang, bang, bang! The energy from 4 ring explosions filled Wang Meng's body, causing his form to visibly swell. Gritting his teeth, he stepped forward and launched a heavy punch. Boom! The impact rolled like thunder. Wang Meng began practicing the supporting combat techniques of the body tempering method, punch after punch. Each exertion, every extreme stretch and contraction of his muscles and bones, acted like a pump, forcing the violent ring explosion energy deeper into his body to scour, penetrate, and integrate into deeper layers. Sizzling heat and the raw taste of qi and blood power leaked from every pore, steam like wisps of escaping energy curling away. Wang Meng's eyes widened with the struggle to control it, but with each strike, his swollen form began to deflate and settle, bones popping as they adjusted. The cycle continued for nearly 15 minutes. When his final move landed and he planted himself like an iron tower, the violent fluctuations ebbed. The excessive qi and blood had been contained and absorbed, leaving Wang Meng with a denser, more solid physique. Every movement now carrying the weight of integrated qi and blood. The experiment ended. Kong Ming'an regarded the stronger life aura settled in Wang Meng's body with a calm, almost clinical eye. There was no joy, only a hint of disappointment. It failed again. Nearly a year ago, after mastering the ring explosion technique, Kong Ming'an had begun researching a method to assist body cultivators using the ring explosion's vast spirit power. The idea was to use the explosive spirit energy to scour the body, while the body's own adaptability harmonized with the body tempering method. Under that dual enhancement, the body would repeatedly break its limits within an acceptable range, solving the body tempering method's loss of efficiency once body refining reached the spirit ancestor stage. He provisionally named the technique the ring tempering method. Half a year ago, during experiments to collect data for refining the ring tempering method, he had repeatedly pushed subjects to break their physical limits. When he had those experimental subjects repeatedly exceed their limits using the ring tempering method, qi and blood naturally appeared. 13. The disadvantages of twin martial souls. Qi and blood is a vague concept in the cognitive system of the Doluo continent. It is neither spirit power nor mental force, but a form of life energy hidden deep in the flesh, muscles, and bones. It is intimately tied to life, spirit power, and even the origin of the spirit itself. Formless and intangible, it still undeniably exists. Powerful spirit masters, especially high-level beast spirit masters, often possess qi and blood like dragons, vast, vigorous, and supporting terrifying physiques and explosive power. The abundance of qi and blood directly affects the foundation of the body, recovery ability, and the depth of one's potential. In a sense, it can be seen as a concrete manifestation of life's origin. The purpose of the ring tempering method experiment, besides collecting daily data for improvements, was to try to touch and guide that qi and blood. Kong Ming'an had hypothesized that the enormous energy released by a ring explosion could act as a guide, activating and directing the subject's own qi and blood, letting that internal energy devour, transform, and fuse with the external force. Compared to relying only on the brute force of body-tempering movements to squeeze and endure, this guidance would multiply the efficiency of tempering, reduce risks, and possibly lead to deeper transformations. Unfortunately, it failed. The soldier's will and the foundation laid by the body-tempering method were strong enough that the ring explosion energy swept through his muscles, bones, and flesh, producing repeated breakthroughs in physique. But he still could not grasp control over qi and blood. Ming'an, Kong Deming said in a steady voice. Experiment failures are common. If you can use ring explosion as a daily cultivation method, that alone is stepping into territory no one has reached before. Since it touches qi and blood, you can't be so impatient. Kong Ming'an only sighed softly and shook his head. He looked at Miss Meng beside him, who held a clipboard. Meng, collect the data. Understood. Meng Hongqin nodded and moved to the data terminal, beginning to download and log the readings according to standard procedure. With only his grandfather left in the room, Kong Ming'an finally asked, "Grandpa, what level are you at now?" 97, Kong Deming replied frankly. "Since I received your improved ring tempering method, I've been able to stably explode up to 8 spirit rings and use them for body refining cultivation. With the resources I've saved, my physique still has room to improve. Once my current limit is polished, the remaining 5 spirit ring slots for my second spirit could be filled with at least 3 90,000-year rings or higher. Breaking through to 98 should be no problem. 99? I don't know. 97. Kong Ming'an felt a tremor of surprise. He hadn't expected his elder to advance so quickly. Only half a year ago, the man had been 95. 2 levels in 6 months. Was that the advantage of twin spirits? Ming'an's brow tightened instead of relaxing. Twin spirit cultivation was an opportunity, yes, but a great hidden danger. If both spirits grow simultaneously, spirit power can rise too fast. If the physique and mental force can't keep pace, loss of control and catastrophic spirit explosions can occur. More seriously, there was the issue of spirit compatibility. If 2 spirits have conflicting attributes and energy properties, forcing them to cultivate together is like burying 2 bombs in the body that could go off at any time. His elder's twin spirits were a textbook case. The first spirit, Silver Moon, is a rare mutation of the Moon Spirit, the Sun-Moon Empire's legacy spirit, leaning toward the mental domain rather than the original Moon attributes. The second, Sun, is likewise an Imperial legacy spirit, pure Yang, rigid, with power close to ultimate fire and light, immensely powerful in direct combat. Silver Moon is extreme Yin, Sun extreme Yang. Symbolically, they embody the Sun-Moon Empire, but in energy and operational rules, they fundamentally clash like ice and fire. Even if his elder only cultivated Silver Moon, conflicts still arose. That he managed to reach 94 while mostly cultivating Silver Moon, all while handling state affairs and experiments, was astonishing. With the knowledge he had, the only known perfect solution to twin spirit conflict was the divinity trials. Bibi Dong and Tang San were examples. They relied on the power of a divinity legacy to fully harmonize conflicting twin spirits. But divinity trials are rare and ephemeral opportunities. Someone can't count on them. That left only one path: an ultimate physique, a body powerful enough to bear, suppress, and even forcibly harmonize 2 conflicting forces. That was why Ming'an had chosen Body Cultivator as his research entry point. Low threshold, but with the potential to create a physique strong enough to solve twin spirit incompatibility. He also needed time to grow and a Tao protector he could trust. His grandfather, without question, was the best candidate. The stronger his elder, the more confidence Ming'an would have. He sighed inwardly, a sudden urgency rising. He had to speed up his cultivation, acquire his first spirit ring, and then use ring explosion to guide qi and blood. Once qi and blood manifested in his body, he could study, perceive, guide, and control it. If he could integrate qi and blood into the body cultivator system, his grandfather would have a real chance of reaching limit Duluo. Then Ming'an could act without restraint. In the original timeline, his elder had fully integrated his spirit and natal spirit tool and become the first level 10 soul engineer on Doluo, a man who, despite only having mid-90s spirit power at the time, could match a limit Dulo in strength. Now his elder was already 97, and 98 seemed imminent. If the research into fusing natal spirit tool and spirit succeeded, assuming no shameless divinity intervened, there was reason to hope they might be truly worry-free. It was already afternoon when he returned to the Kong residence with Meng Hongchen. After he handed her the organized materials, she settled into her usual cultivation. The longer she stayed by his side, the more she realized her own talent was limited. If she wanted to remain near him, she would have to work harder. Watching her energetic figure round the corridor, Kong Ming'an's faint smile faded. He turned and walked back to his laboratory. The identity verifier chimed. The heavy alloy door slid open and closed behind him with a muted finality. The lab was as bright as ever, the air dense with a metallic chill that sharpened the senses. At his bench, Kong Ming'an took a specially crafted crystal box from his soul tool storage ring. Made of high-strength insulating crystal and woven with a soul tool isolation array, the box could seal most special materials and keep their properties from degrading. Inside the crystal box lay a carving knife. Its style was ancient. The whole body was a dark, chill-inducing green. The blade was long and narrow, its edge giving off an eerie glint. The hilt was wrapped in twisted, dark gold filigree that exuded cold, malevolent, greedy auras, as if countless wailing souls had been trapped within. This was unmistakably the soul-devouring carving knife. In the original timeline, Huo Yuhao would have acquired this knife years later at an auction in Star Luo City, but now it was Kong Ming'an's. After his past life memories awakened, he had used his authority to send people searching out the opportunities that had appeared in the original story, and the soul-devouring carving knife was one of them. His agents had managed to buy it from the last descendant of a ruined noble family in the Star Luo Empire for a mere 400,000 gold coins, practically a steal for an artifact whose origin was the gold of life. That family, however, had been shattered by the knife's evil backlash. Kong Ming'an did not remove the knife at once. He closed his eyes and centered himself, easing his mind toward peak clarity. For half a year, every day since he acquired it, he had been purifying the knife. Without Iliex at his side, his absolute control over his own mental force let him resist the blade's curses. He used that mental force to peel away resentment and maledictions, bit by bit. The process was painfully slow, inefficient even, but it worked, and it trained his mental force as well. Daily stripping of the knife's resentful threads had become routine. He extended his hands. Silver-glowing threads of mental force sprang from his fingertips, coiling over the knife inside the crystal box, and binding the writhing curse threads like a masterful surgeon. The silver strands peeled off tendrils of malice and shredded them cleanly. Each peel provoked the knife into violent tremors and unleashed a shriek from the thousands of resentful souls within. Kong Ming'an, long accustomed to that sound, simply felt his mind harden and purify under the pressure of those cries. Time slid by. This session lasted longer than any before. Today was the final push. His fingertips remained steady as ever. The silver threads worked like surgical blades, pulling resentful fragments from the knife one precise stroke at a time. The knife suddenly erupted in unprecedented vibration. The last, dense core of dark red curse, so compact it had resisted all previous efforts, was now entwined by dozens of silver strands and being dragged out from the blade's heart. A mournful roar from the soul level exploded through Kong Ming'an's mental sea, trying to twist and corrupt his will. He ignored it. The silver threads tightened, and pure mental flames flared into being. The curse reacted as if plunged into ice water. The pure mental fire incinerated it. The curse let out a final agonized wail, then melted and vaporized. As the last wisp of taint dissolved, the soul-devouring carving knife underwent a sudden, stunning transformation. The dark green shed its grime, revealing inner brilliance. The blade shone like finely carved jade, translucent and ringing with a clean, emerald light. A vast, pure life aura, utterly unlike the previous malice, spread through the laboratory in an instant. Gold of life. Kong Ming'an stared at the blade's true form, relief and a rare smile touching his features. Half a year of effort had finally borne fruit. A tool forged from the gold of life would be invaluable for his future research into life energy and the mysteries of qi and blood. He reached out, intending to feel the gold of life personally. The moment his fingertip brushed the blade, something unexpected happened. A thin, crisp sound like fabric tearing in the air cut through the lab. Less than a yard in front of him, a hairline spatial rift opened, so faint and dark it seemed to drink in the light. From it drifted a tiny cluster of gray light, wavering and weak as a guttering candle. The light seemed fragile, as if the gentlest breeze could scatter it. Yet it radiated extremely ancient, pure mental fluctuations, wise and worn by countless vicissitudes, and Kong Ming'an's instincts went instantly on alert. The gray light cluster appeared to sense the gold of life. It turned toward Kong Ming'an, and an old, weary voice echoed directly in his mental sea. Such pure and vast life origin, gold of life? Heh heh. I never thought that this last thread of my remnant soul, on the verge of dissipating at any moment, would still have a chance to live. Wariness thickened the voice. After a pause, the gray light flickered and transmitted a clearer thought into his mind. Kid, would you like to make a deal with this old man? There really is a way to die. There really is a way to die. God realm, sea god's mansion. Boom. A violent tremor ran through the sea god's mansion, and a pressure far beyond that of an ordinary first-rank divinity rolled outward, stirring up waves of sea illusion. Third brother? The woman with rabbit ears on her head stared at the blue-haired man beside her, worry thick in her voice and eyes. I'm fine, the blue-haired man murmured, then shook his head and let a smile appear. Don't worry, Xiaowu, I just saw something interesting. Is that so? The rabbit-eared woman relaxed a little. She had absolute trust in her husband. Tang San looked calm, his gaze fixed on the projection of the Duluo plain before him, but a shadow of gloom crossed his eyes. His grand plan, honed by 10,000 years of scheming, had hit an unexpected snag. He had only taken his attention briefly off the Doluo plain, and the soul-devouring carving knife, intended for the Son of Luck, had slipped into the hands of an unknown figure who had appeared from nowhere. Worse, for reasons he could not fathom, the Duluo plain's plain will had even bestowed a high-level remnant soul upon this stranger. If that were all, it would have been bad enough. But the plain will did not stop there. It actually sliced off half of the enormous luck that Tang San had accumulated over 10,000 years. Luck meant to nurture his Son of Luck, and bestowed it on this person as well. A second Son of Luck. An unnatural prickling crawled up Tang San's spine. He hated losing control. He hated surprises. He truly had a knack for courting disaster. With a dark look, he separated a wisp of divine thought. Since an unknown variable had appeared, it had to be dealt with. No matter who it was, they could not be allowed to derail his 10,000-year plan. Just as Tang San's divine thought prepared to slip past the Duluo plain's barrier and re-enter the lower realm through the back door he had left, a thunderous roar ripped through the air. Boom. A dark purple divine force of destruction instantly shredded Tang San's descending divine thought and seized the connection back to his main body, as if trying to suppress him outright. Destruction! Tang San flared. He materialized above the mansion, the sea god trident appearing in his hand. Pausing in midair, he forcibly dispersed the encroaching force of destruction. The conflict between two members of the God Realm Committee turned the usually hushed God Realm into a flurry of activity. Divinities emerged from shadow, many only to watch with keen interest. Feeling the gaze of so many, Tang San's face tightened, but he kept his stare fixed on the dark purple figure in the distance. Blue-gold light surged around him, and the sea god's divine force pulsed, exuding a strangely sacred aura. Destruction. What do you want? There was a threat in Tang San's voice. He had little patience for the god of destruction, who so often opposed him. The god of destruction merely regarded him coolly, ignoring the taunt, then spoke in a measured tone. Divinities are not permitted to interfere in the lower realms, sea god. You know that rule, do you not? Especially not to the extent of attempting to kill a Son of Luck. Are you trying to force the plane to self-destruct? The destruction aura swelled, and the light around Tang San trembled precariously. Gritting his teeth, Tang San retorted with righteous heat. The Duluo plane's jurisdiction is mine. Outsiders have no say. It's not just about jurisdiction, the god of destruction said. Interfering with the lower realm and trying to kill a Son of Luck is enough grounds for me to call a God Realm Committee meeting and put your jurisdiction to a vote. You. Tang San was at a loss for words, but he forced himself calm. I have not interfered yet. Consider this a warning. The god of destruction looked at him without warmth. This is your first offense. I'll let it slide this once, but if there is a next time, we'll settle it at the committee. With that, he eased off his suppression. Still, dark purple divine force pressed down and crushed the blue-gold light about Tang San. Bang! Tang San's body jolted and he was forced back a few paces. He clenched the sea god trident, bolstered himself with divine force, and hung suspended again, pushing the surrounding destructive force away. By the time he steadied himself and looked up, the god of destruction had already vanished. Tang San stood there, unreadable. Third brother. Xiao Wu flew out of the mansion, her voice trembling. Are you all right? I'm fine, Xiao Wu. Tang San gave a brief, reassuring smile and returned to the mansion with her. He chastised himself inwardly. He'd been too hasty and had attracted destruction's attention. If he could have fully controlled the Asura god position, would he have been so easily checked by destruction? And the Duluo plane's plain will, it had ignored his arrangements, cut the luck he had spent 10,000 years cultivating, and nurtured a second son of luck. The plane really did have a talent for courting disaster. No, his 10,000-year plan could not fall apart. He had to find a way. Turning to face Xiao Wu's anxious gaze, he changed the subject. By the way, Xiao Wu, what did you want to ask me earlier? This. Xiao Wu's worry lingered, but seeing his composure, she held back further questions and asked what she had meant to. I just wanted to know where Xiao Qi has been these past few days. I haven't seen her lately. Xiao Qi? Tang San hesitated, and then a flash of brilliant calculation lit his eyes. Of course, Xiao Qi. A planned framework slid into place in his mind. Don't worry, Xiao Wu. I sent Xiao Qi down to the lower realm for training. Sent? For training? Yes. With Da Ming and Ming watching over her and my divine thought watching closely, Xiao Qi will be fine. As Tang San spoke, he calmed his spirit and connected with the several wisps of divine thought he had long ago planted in the lower realm. A moment later, his eyes were steady. The Duluo plane had been alerted by his earlier attempt to interfere. Any fresh action would be detected by destruction. But the divine thoughts he had left in the lower realm earlier were untouched. A mere son of luck. Could one really make such a fuss? Tang San snorted inwardly, a plan already forming. Meanwhile, in the god of destruction's mansion, the god of destruction had materialized and sat upon his throne. With the authority of a god realm enforcer, he summoned the projection of the Duluo plane before him and studied it. Then a gentle voice sounded in his ear. Is this the plane the sea god governs? This is the Duluo plane. The god of destruction's gaze was calm as he gently took the hand of the goddess of life, who had appeared beside him without his noticing, and looked down. His eyes landed on 3 conspicuously bright swathes of luck above the Duluo plane. That was why he'd noticed Tang San's sudden action. The Duluo plane was simply too obvious. For an ordinary plane will, producing 1 son of luck already taxed its limits. Before today's incident, the Duluo plane already had 2. One was the imperial auspicious beast, the 3-eyed golden lion in the Star Do Great Forest, about 20% of the plane's luck, and confined in coverage to the Star Do Great Forest. It belonged to the spirit beast race. The other was a descendant of the same clan as that Tier 2 divinity, the god of war. Young and not yet fully formed, he accounted for roughly 80% of the luck the Duluo plane had accumulated over 10,000 years. The luck there was almost tangible. Barring accidents, that young one could very well condense his own god position, much like the 2 exceptionally gifted Tier 1 divinities who had ascended from the Duluo plane in the past, the first sea god and the first angel god. He had thought Tang San fortunate that the Duluo plane under his jurisdiction produced many talents. In time, Tang San would likely gain several subordinate divinities with great future potential. If the Doluo plane kept producing talent, those new divinities would probably join Tang San's faction, which would complicate the God Realm's plans for expansion. But something about this was wrong. When a plane will perceives a divinity who originated from itself, it naturally regards them with a friendly attitude, like a human mother seeing her grown, successful child. That was why the God Realm had the rule. Divinities have jurisdiction over the planes from which they ascended. Yet after Tang San's divine thought was perceived by the Duluo plane's will, the plane will reacted not with maternal warmth, but with shock, like an ungrateful son caught trying to steal from his old mother, who picks up a broom and chases him off. The plane will actively splitting luck to create another son of luck was illogical. Tang San then reaching straight into the lower realm to attack that son of luck was even more nonsensical. Clearly Tang San had some scheme, and it was harmful to the Duluo plane. Could Tang San be treating the Duluo plane like a vegetable garden, harvesting its luck? The god of destruction thought, frowning. Harvesting luck from the lower realm was strictly forbidden by the god realm. If that were true, it alone would be cause for the god realm's central authority to sanction Tang San. He hesitated, then called up a projection of the Duluo plane and magnified it. The image revealed a figure sitting in a laboratory. Beside it, a strand of life experience echoes flashed by, system shaping, spirit ring inception, and some special fate shielding that prevents peeking into memories. The god of destruction's eyes brightened. This was a talent. Compared with the son of luck, who carried 80% of the Duluo plane's 10,000-year accumulation, this child had genuine potential to become an independent divinity. The first reaction upon seeing such a talent shouldn't be to recruit him, but to move to bully and kill him, he murmured, the displeasure of old rivalry surfacing. Heh, Asura, now there's someone who can disgust me. He smoothed his expression and extended a hand, sending a thread of divine force to anchor itself to the figure. A talent with a high probability of becoming a divinity was worth early investment. And if Tang San kept attacking, this could be used as leverage, an excuse to move against Tang San. Xiao Zi, he muttered. Beside him, the goddess of life's tone carried uncertainty. The god of destruction withdrew his attention and looked at her. What is it, Xiao Lu? My god position is, it's found a successor who meets the standard, she said, frowning and pointing at a different projection with something close to astonishment. It's found someone who meets the criteria. The god of destruction froze. I remember, Xiao Lu, the standard you set for god position inheritance was someone with greater potential than you in the control of life? Yes, she answered. He became serious and followed the direction of her finger, peering at the projection. Before he could study it further, a clear transmission came from his own god position into his mind. God position successor found. He stared, stunned. No way. Why had his god position moved as well? Sun Moon Empire, Mingdu, Kong family mansion. In Kong Ming'an's spiritual sea, he sat in deep silence, staring at the pale humanoid figure before him. He felt set up. He had just finished purifying the soul-devouring carving knife when a spatial rift opened, and Iliek's remnant soul floated out and bargained with him. It felt too coincidental. Watching Iliek's overseeing the fusion of the gold of living beings into his body, Kong Ming'an thought through the possibilities. First, his existence was now noticed by high-level beings. He'd likely already been marked by that pure and noble God King Tang. If he followed book logic, to God King Tang he was an unexpected variable that threatened a 10,000-year plan. To avoid accidents, Tang would eliminate him. From that perspective, Iliek's sudden appearance couldn't have been arranged by Tang San. After all, Kong Ming'an was already someone Tang would want eliminated, so Tang wouldn't be the one to grant him opportunities. Then who could have orchestrated so many coincidences to send Iliek's to him? It had to be the plain will. Only a plain will could engineer such coincidences that even God King Tang, with all his cunning, could not. If the plain will had intervened, it meant he had been wagered on. Being bet on by the plain will, and still alive despite Tang San's notice, meant either the plain will had blocked a possible attack, or someone in the god realm had acted to prevent Tang San's move. Have I become a chess piece in their struggle? Kong Ming'an murmured. He showed no fear. If anything, his eyes brightened. For now, it seemed he was fine. 17. Trading 2.0. The emerald green life force seeped into Kong Ming'an's sea of mental power like ink spreading through paper, blooming in clusters. What had been a monotonous, placid sea of consciousness slowly took on the contours of a real mental space under the infusion of this pure, vast vitality. The volume of my mental sea has increased at least fourfold, and it's still expanding. My spirit power has improved, and it even seems to have gained some undying properties. He felt the change in his body, too. My physical constitution, when manifested, has improved. My physique has reached at least the spirit ancestor level. I might soon be able to withstand a 10,000-year spirit ring. Inside the mental sea, Kong Ming'an's projection quietly tested the effects of merging with the life gold. A trace of satisfaction appeared in his eyes. The improvement exceeded his expectations. It had not been wasted after 6 months of painstaking purification. He calmed his thoughts, rose, and bowed slightly to the gray remnant soul nearby. "Thank you, old Iliex." Iliex shook his head. "It's my duty. That pure life gold couldn't sustain this wisp of my remnant soul on its own. If not for you, I would have likely dissipated at any moment." Kong Ming'an shrugged. Their relationship was pragmatic, mutually beneficial cooperation. "What are your plans next, old Iliex?" he asked with casual curiosity. "You don't need to pry," Iliex replied, but there was a hint of interest in his voice. He studied Kong Ming'an for a moment, as if confirming something, then said flatly, "You know me, don't you?" Kong Ming'an hesitated only briefly. He hadn't meant his recognition to show so plainly, but the older man's acuity was not surprising. He dropped pretense and spread his hands. "I do. I'm aware of many of your deeds, but this is the first time we've actually met." "I see." Iliex accepted that and did not probe further. As a remnant soul, he had few memories left. Lingering over them was pointless. What mattered now was that the young man before him bore no hostility, and perhaps even some goodwill. Iliex studied Kong Ming'an's recent actions and after a moment looked up with steady eyes. "Child, are you willing to make another bargain with me?" Kong Ming'an was taken aback, but Ilix's earnestness made his meaning clear. He smiled and nodded. "I'm willing." Two shrewd minds can make easy bargains, each knowing what the other needs and what they can offer in return. With a concise exchange, Ilix offered knowledge of necromancy, light magic, and derivative techniques for soul power and mental force in return for respite, time to recuperate within his eye of life. For Kong Ming'an, the techniques themselves were valuable, but the greater prize was Ilix, the man and his mind. Ilix was a rare talent who had once overturned the world with his own research. Compared to Kong Ming'an, who had awakened memories of a previous life and held the energy spirit, already a unique boon for experimentation, Ilix brought an entirely different scientific perspective and a power system distinct from the Duluo world. Many spirit masters on the Duluo plane, even those like Miss Meng whom Kong Ming'an had cultivated, fell into blind spots shaped by a lifetime of common sense in that world. Kong Ming'an and Ilix, by contrast, were less likely to be bound by the traditional spirit master system. Simply acquiring Ilix's knowledge was valuable. Bringing him into future research was an even greater opportunity. But such trust would take time to build. For now, establishing a peaceful, cooperative relationship sufficed. Watching Ilix condense back into a small gray cluster and retreat into the eye of life, Kong Ming'an felt his consciousness slide back from the mental sea to his physical body. His eyes opened. Instinctively, he clenched his right hand, then slowly opened it again. The surge in his bodily strength made him feel almost unreal, an adjustment he would need time to accommodate, but not one beyond him. More important, a cool emerald glow pulsed up from his palm. Life force, of extraordinarily high purity, flowed at his command. The Life Gold's fusion had not only expanded his mental sea and strengthened his body, but had left him with active control over the life force within him, constantly nourishing both his body and mind. Energy. Life force can be classified as energy as well, he mused. His earlier hypothesis proved correct. The kinds of energy spirit can manipulate depend on which types of energy I possess. Kong Ming'an watched 3 distinct energies rise from his palm: spirit power, mental force, and life force. A calm clarity settled over him. With mastery over these forms of energy, his future control of Qi and blood seemed certain, and the basic framework of a body cultivator was forming within him. Another question arose immediately: the choice of his spirit ring. He was only 7.5 years old, and his spirit power rank was 7. Between pills like the Xuan water pill, the Life Gold's secondary modifications, and his cultivation, his spirit power rank would, barring accidents, reach 10 within a year. Then he would absorb his first spirit ring. But was a spirit ring wholly the spirit master's own power? Could its elemental attributes be directed by him? If he killed a fire-attributed spirit beast and absorbed its ring, would he also be able to control fire? If so, his choice of spirit beast would be crucial. He could aim for multi-attribute beasts, like the Silver Moon Wolf King, which combined elements such as water, fire, earth, wind, light, darkness, and lightning, or seek out extremely rare, special attribute beasts with powers tied to space, time, gravity, or annihilation. There were many options, and fortunately, plenty of time to decide. 18. Tang San's order. While someone else was still planning his future, on the other side, Clear Sky Sect floated among the clouds. Outside the Sect Master's pavilion, in a small gazebo, two figures idly played chess and exchanged casual barbs. The more robust of the two could not contain himself for long. "Damn, big brother, can we not drink tea? This stuff has no taste," he complained, wincing. The other, a middle-aged man in a sky-blue robe, set down his teacup without a word. He raised his eyes slightly, glanced at the robust man, and said evenly, "When your mind is clear, then I'll let you drink alcohol." "My mind is already clear. Clear enough to give little donger alcohol?" The robust man's face twisted, and he muttered low, "I was being kind. The monkey wine I buried thousands of years ago. I brought it out thinking its medicinal effects could strengthen Little Donger's physique. And then Little Donger slept for months without waking? She isn't even 6 yet. How many times have I told you not to use spirit beast methods on her?" The sky-blue-robed man snapped. The robust fellow fell silent. Just as the sky-blue-robed man opened his mouth to scold further, both men froze at the same instant. Their faces hardened. Without hesitation, they vanished and returned to a secret chamber inside the sect master's pavilion. The moment they stepped inside, both placed their hands to their foreheads. Two streams of blue-gold light shot out and flowed forward, condensing into a blue figure, Tang San. With a gentle smile, he regarded the two before him. "Deming Ming, long time no see." Deming paused, then went down on one knee. "Your Excellency, Sea God." Ming reacted and knelt beside him. Tang San gave a helpless little smile, but didn't tell them to rise. After a brief silence, he said, "I need you two to do something for me." "Command, Your Excellency, Sea God," Deming answered, head bowed. A flicker of satisfaction crossed Tang San's face. He spoke slowly, "I want you to kill someone for me." Moments later, back in the gazebo, Deming and Ming resumed their previous positions. They sat, but the easy, leisurely air was gone. The atmosphere had grown heavy. After a long while, Ming could not help but ask, hesitantly, "Big brother, about this, what do you think?" "I'm going to lie down and think," Deming replied. "Not going to kill him?" Ming's voice carried indignation, unwilling to accept the delay. "No rush." Deming's eyes were calm. "Although I don't know the full situation, for now there's no need to hurry." He tapped his forehead with a finger. "He withdrew his divine thought from our sea of consciousness. That proves he doesn't want anyone else to know he ordered a hit. And whoever he fears are likely only other divinities. If we act, whether we succeed or fail, I'm afraid." Deming let the sentence trail off. The implication was clear. "So are we just going to let this drag on while we rot?" Ming snapped. "Relax." Deming glanced at him. "Let's stall. If he's careful enough to remove the restriction in our sea of consciousness, he doesn't want to be seen as the one who gave the order. The divine thought in our minds has been withdrawn and self-sealed in that secret room, so for now, he can't affect us. One day in the God realm is a year in Doluo. Let's draw it out for a few years. That guy is too pure. He'd never personally soil himself with such a thing." Ming gave a rueful laugh but nodded. "You're right. Send someone to the Sun Moon Empire to investigate, just to show we're taking action. But unless he pushes us, leave it be for now." "Understood." Ming slipped away to carry out the orders. Deming sat alone in the gazebo, sipping his tea, his gaze distant, towards the Sun Moon Empire. A few days later, in the Sun Moon Empire at the Kong family mansion, blows crashed through the air on the training ground. Boom! 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 Xiao Hongqian, who'd already doubled his usual training, watched from the sidelines with knitted brows and couldn't help turning to his sister. "Did you drug him?" Miss Meng gave him a look and shook her head. "No chance for that yet." "Then why has he been like this these past few days?" Xiao Hongchen's voice rose. 4 full hours of relentless, high-intensity body-tempering method training. This wasn't mere overexertion. It looked like self-destruction. If it were him, he'd be in the infirmary. Who knows? Maybe. It's Ming'an's newest breakthrough, Miss Meng said casually. It wasn't unusual for Kong Ming'an to pull off sudden, astonishing progress. She had long since gotten used to it. Her gaze, though, was fixed on the shirtless figure training a short distance away. So that was Ming'an's physique. She wondered, not unreasonably, what it would feel like to touch it. Her eyes narrowed. A faint smile curved her lips as she adopted a more relaxed posture. Time slid by. At length, the young man finally lowered his fists and closed his eyes to let his body calm. Unseen to everyone else, an inner voice, a phantom presence only noticeable to Ming'an, observed and commented with interest. Using spirit power as a foundation, simulating a specialized spiritual ability to stimulate the body's acupoints and replicate the effect of body tempering. The silent observer mused. It's somewhat analogous to the Night System's cultivation, but there are major differences. It's only a difference in the underlying foundations due to divergent power systems, and compared to the framework I designed, this current body cultivator is still crude. Kong Ming'an shook his head inwardly, frank and without false modesty. Faced with the possible threat of a certain god king, he felt his current gains were insufficient. Calmly, he spoke his thoughts. The Night System won't fit the Duluo world, but your blood refinement golden body has valuable elements to reference. The silent presence, Iliex, grew intrigued. Over the past few days, he'd been watching Ming'an's experiments, and those experiments had convinced him this young man shared his appetite for exploring the unknown. At first, he'd thought of taking Ming'an as a disciple. Now his attitude toward him was more equal, more like a fellow traveler. Are you planning to replace demonic beast blood with spirit beast essence blood? Iliex asked. No, Kong Ming'an shook his head, a note of anticipation in his voice. Actually, it can be more direct. For example, replacing demonic god blood with Qi and blood to achieve a Qi and blood forging golden body. He proposed the Qi and blood forging golden body method, not because he intended to start researching it right away, but because he had a plan. He knew what to do and when to do it. The method was important, sure, but for him, it was only a new project folder with a name and an idea, no framework yet. It wouldn't bring short-term gains and might even slow him down. So why propose it? To spark Iliex's interest. As a fellow researcher, Iliex wouldn't ignore something like that. As expected, Iliex considered the idea, amusement flickering in his eyes. Collision and fusion of systems, not bad, he murmured, then shook his head. Unfortunately, I haven't studied the Night System much. My focus is magic and soul. I can't help much there. It's all right. Kong Ming'an smiled and mentally transmitted a document titled Self-Conceived Spirit Ring to Iliex. Elder Iliex, what do you think of this? Iliex glanced at it and brightened. The concept of a spirit ring materializing was intriguing. The pages piqued his curiosity. After a moment, he looked back at Kong Ming'an with an amused smile. You little rascal, are you trying to get me to do all the hard work for you? Cough. Well, you are the expert on the soul. Besides, isn't this useful for your revival? The spirit ring seems highly malleable. Iliex caught sight of the conjectures about spirit ring materialization in the document and laughed. You rascal, he sighed, then nodded. All right, I'll handle it. Thank you, Elder Iliex. No need for thanks. In your terms, it's just mutual benefit. With a smile, Iliex transformed into a stream of gray light and flowed back into the eye of life in his glabella. Kong Ming'an let out a small, relieved breath. With Iliex taking over the spirit ring research, he could return his focus to cultivation, body tempering. So he followed the plan. Days folded into months. Spring slipped into autumn almost without him noticing. When he looked up again, a year and a half had passed. In that time, Kong Ming'an turned 9. His spirit power rank had reached 10, and his physique had developed to the level of an ordinary spirit king. That year, the Sun Moon Empire quietly formed 3 special Soul Engineer battle groups. Small Sun Moon units began harassing Star Luo border forces repeatedly, and the border showed signs of an approaching war. The Clear Sky Sect's Great Sect Master and Second Sect Master both announced seclusion, handing all sect affairs to the elders and confirming the young sect master's right to inherit. And in the mercantile districts of the three original Duluo empires, a business association named Ming'an began to rise, gradually monopolizing the spirit tool market. "Damn it, why are you so tough, you jerk?" Xiao Hongqian, who had obtained his second spirit ring, a 1,000-year one, banged his fist into his palm and stared at the person in front of him with a face that said, "I just can't understand you." Kong Ming'an looked thoughtful, but the corners of his mouth lifted in a faint smile. "Maybe my physique is just unusual." A few years had softened the edges of the boy who'd once seemed immature. He was still developing, but no longer scrawny. A plain white lab coat couldn't hide the gentle, bamboo slender bearing he now carried. His features were delicate, his eyes warm and a little lazy, the faint smile on his lips making him look oddly charming, a hint of roguishness beginning to show. To most people that was attractive. To Xiao Hongqian, he was a complete scoundrel, a pig after their family's prized cabbage, and utterly worthy of a punch. "So special you can go toe-to-toe with a spirit king? Do you think I'm an idiot? He definitely cheated," Xiao blurted. Who knows?" Kong Ming'an smiled and spread his hands. A little over a month before his 9th birthday, he had celebrated the milestone, and by then he'd been cultivating the body tempering method for 2 years and 8 months. How could someone reach Spirit King physique in that time? The short answer? He cheated. When he first developed the body tempering method, his cultivation efficiency was about 5 times that of others. It wasn't that he was hoarding secrets. Others simply couldn't exert the same fine control over their spirit power, not even those titled Duluo. Translated to an average aptitude, his 2 years and 8 months would equal at least 13 or 14 years. And even that rapid result required almost infinite resources and the terrifying recovery granted by the gold of life. If someone relied only on the body tempering method without later adding the ring tempering method, reasonable estimates put the time needed at around 20 years. The method itself was sound. It was just that one person's progress was unreasonable. "Your progress isn't bad either," Kong Ming'an said. "Your second spirit ring is a 1,300-year one. At this rate, you could try for a third ring of around 6,000 years. Xiao Hongqian, talented enough in the original story to become a spirit king at 15, lifted an intrigued eyebrow. A 6,000-year third ring could mean a shot at a 10,000-year fourth ring later. He was about to ask more when a silver-white figure drifted over and looped an arm through Kong Ming'an's. "What are you two talking about?" Miss Meng, now a graceful young woman with ice-blue eyes, asked, curiosity in her voice, eyes aimed mostly at Kong. "Nothing, just looking at Xiao's body report. How's yours? What are the numbers?" "Average, I guess. But you've made so many delicious things lately, Ming'an. I've put on a little weight." "Have you? Then try carrying me." "That's not necessary." Xiao Hongqian watched his family's prized cabbage being curded and thought, "No, you two. Enough. Don't treat me like air." He was fuming on the inside. 20. Thorn Dragon. "You guys are pushing it," Xiao Hongqian protested. "Tsk." Miss Meng clicked her tongue softly, annoyed but not pressing the matter. She released her hold on a certain someone and naturally stood at his side, then asked with a bright smile, "By the way, Ming'an, you still haven't chosen your first spirit ring? It's been over a month." "No rush. I'll wait until Grandfather Kong returns," Kong Ming'an said nonchalantly. His grandfather cared a great deal about the choice of his first spirit ring. Just after coming out of seclusion, when everyone thought he was still secluded, Grandfather Kong had gone out in person to find a spirit beast for him. Having such a capable person go on the errand, a high-ranked spirit master who commanded twin spirits, was skilled in ring explosion and who was nearly a 10th-ranked soul engineer, made him feel very secure. As expected, Grandfather Kong was the most reliable. Kong Ming'an moved on from the topic of the spirit ring and chatted with the Hongqian siblings about the ring tempering technique. Both of them had already broken through to 2 rings, and their physiques had matured to the spirit elder stage, so they were ready to begin tempering rings. Ming'an had no intention of withholding anything and began explaining the precautions for the technique. Just as he spoke, the heavy alloy door of the laboratory slid open. Kong Ming'an was the first to notice and looked up. Kong Deming stood in the doorway in a travel-worn long robe. "Grandfather Kong?" Ming'an asked, surprised. He hadn't expected him back so soon. "Elder Kong," Xiao Hongchen said with a touch of respect. "Grandfather Kong, you're back!" Meng Hongchen greeted with even more warmth. Kong Deming nodded, a little weary but his eyes still bright. He walked to the center of the laboratory with practiced ease and slowly took a cylindrical container from his portable spirit tool. It was about half a person's height, made of silver-white metal and covered in countless complex seal runes. "Is this a beast sealing platform?" Kong Ming'an asked. Kong Deming gave a slight nod. The beast sealing platform, as its name implied, was used to seal spirit beasts, an 8th-ranked spirit tool. A more advanced version, the god sealing platform, had once sealed the Snow Empress. He set the silver-white pillar on the special platform in the center of the lab and casually gestured. The surrounding spirit tool arrays came alive, forming multiple energy containment fields. Meng Hongchen stepped closer out of curiosity and peered at the pillar, which radiated powerful sealing fluctuations. In a low voice, she asked, "Grandfather Kong, what kind of spirit beast is sealed inside?" Kong Deming's gaze swept over the platform, and he answered calmly, "Thorny dragon." At the name, Ming'an's normally steady eyes flickered, and he breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Thorny dragons were an extremely rare type of sub-dragon spirit beast with spatial attributes. Born with the power to manipulate space, they boasted bizarre attacks, phenomenal speed, and short-range teleportation. Their sharp tails could even rend space. Their potential was enormous. When they reached great age, they could even open a private spatial battlefield and form a thorny dragon domain. Among spatial spirit beasts, they were excellent, exactly what he had hoped for in his first ring. Ming'an had made several contingency plans to make sure his first spirit ring suited him. Ideally, the beast's attribute would be a top-tier one. Time, space, or fate were the first choices, followed by other supreme attributes like the ultimate ice of the Ice Jade Scorpion. If possible, he preferred a silver heroic beast. If none of those turned up, his fallback was to go to the Jingyang mountain range and hunt the Silver Moon Wolf King, which had 7 elemental attributes. That was his worst-case plan. At first, he'd considered the depths of the Evil Demon Forest, hoping to capture a mutated Evil Eye Tyrant with spatial or even temporal attributes. But it was Yeshishui's territory and the den of the Holy Spirit cult. An evil emperor lay dormant even deeper within. The risks were too great, and for Grandfather Kong's safety, he abandoned the plan. So finding a thorny dragon now was better than he had dared hope. Kong Deming watched his grandson's expression and, unusually solemn, said, "Ming'an, although this thorny dragon only just broke through to 10,000 years, and I happened to catch it while it was weak, if it produces a spirit ring, the energy contained will far exceed that of an ordinary 10,000-year ring." "Are you absolutely sure?" Ming'an asked. Even though his grandfather had seen him perform miracles, and he possessed a physique far beyond his peers, the idea of a 10th-ranked spirit master absorbing a 10,000-year spirit ring still sounded incredible. Ming'an met his grandfather's worried eyes and smiled, relaxed and confident. "Don't worry, grandfather. I can't say 10 out of 10, but 9 out of 10 is probably accurate." Absorbing a 10,000-year spirit ring required more than just a hardy body. There was a more dangerous invisible hurdle, soul shock. 10,000-year spirit beasts retained enormous soul power. The resentment and soul remnants left on the ring upon their death would impact the absorber's mental sea, at best causing severe mental injury, at worst leaving them a vegetable. Normally, only a spirit king's mental strength could resist such shock. But for Ming'an, this was the least of his concerns. His solution was simple and fundamental: purify and eliminate the lingering soul remnants on the spirit ring. Without the beast's soul residues, there would be no shock. "Elder Yi," Ming'an murmured inwardly. "Hey, don't worry." An old but amused voice answered in his mind. "I haven't been idle this past year. Leave the lingering resentment of a mere 10,000-year spirit beast to this old man." Ming'an relaxed. "Then I'll trouble Elder Yi." "It's a small matter," came the reply.